America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for joining us tonight, and we do have a large crowd here, so we'll try to move right through. And happy St. Patrick's Day. That'll be the only announcement I have for right now. And we'll start with resident comments. So would everyone take a turn and come up to the table, state your name and your address, and comment. And since there are so many people here, if we could really try to keep it to 1 or 2 minutes, we'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Eleanor Stoller, Meadow Road. I watch all the meetings I can get to, and I noticed on one of them you have an Article 22 that comes under citizens articles, and therefore it's 22 at the end of it. Mm-hmm. And because it's an article, it's really not a citizen, it's the Council on Aging Board. And this is a request if you could bring it up a little closer rather than the end of the night, because, it's past the old people's bedtimes or something. If that could be considered, I really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes?
Good evening. Rose Moraes, 46 Longfellow Drive, chairperson for the Council on Aging. I'm here to support the additional hours for our administrator, Emily Perkins. There's no reason why she shouldn't be considered for these additional hours. She's been putting in extra hours anyway, and she should really be getting paid for all the hard work that she is doing. Not only that, if we want a viable center, we need her input, and we need a steadiness and a constancy of an administrator on duty. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Mary Pat O'Connor, 138 Maple Road, and I'm also the president of Long Meadow Soccer Association, and I'm here tonight for the warrant from the CPC supported warrant for the Wolf Swamp Fields. We have a program that's growing, and we're constantly losing kids because we never have the field space in the spring especially, and lacrosse has been very generous with us this year, so we have a little space, but if we could have more space, that would help our program tremendously as it grows. Thank you.
Thank you.
Marilyn Hurst, Brentwood Road. I'm here on behalf of Emily Perkins. And as far as the few extra hours that we think she ought to have, I want to speak to that for a moment. Rose already gave you some ideas. But part of the problem is we have so many activities that we can't offer because we're constricted to a 6-hour day, where most senior centers are open at least 8. And as a result, we can't offer, and we have, as you know, over 4,000 seniors in town. So we're not reaching everyone, because a lot of a part of reaching out has to do with the versatility of what we offer. And I hope you will consider this. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim, okay.
Hi, my name is George Schmeck. I'm a member of the Council on Aging, and I'm here to speak on behalf of Emily Perkins, who needs 5 additional hours in order to do her job properly. In point of fact, she's working them, but she's not getting paid for it, and that's not right.
Thank you.
Jim Russell, 108 Bel Air Drive, Chairman of the Park and Recreation Commission. I'm here to lobby the Board of Selectmen for approval of the funds to change 2 ball fields into playing areas. An email was sent out making reference to this being phase 1. I'm here to tell the Board of Selectmen tonight that there are no other plans in the works for a Phase 2 or Phase 3 or Phase 4. Maybe down the road we might ask for irrigation because grass doesn't grow. The water line that's there is served by the water tower. The pressure is not adequate to put a water gun or two to water. So I just want to quantify that. I'm also asking that money be allocated for the blind courts. Last year, I had to take the initiative in closing one court because of the fear of somebody getting badly hurt. It's my vision that if we don't do something major, there'll be more courts shut down for the lines of safety so that the town does not have a lawsuit on its hands. So I would ask for your support. These courts are over 40 years old. They are dangerous. And Long Meadow is known for its tennis. There are 2 tennis teams that could be potentially state champions. And it's criminal that we cannot invite the other teams to have the tournament held here in Long Meadow. And final item I'd just like to throw out as a new board member of the Council of Aging. You try to get information when you become a new member. There are 4,408 seniors living in this town, approximately. There are 3,200 18-year-old and younger that are in this town. And from the latest census, there's roughly 14,800 people. So when you add up the 4,400 with the 3,200, you have approximately half of the residents in this town that are either seniors or the juniors. Our senior center is one of the best kept secrets around. And we're going to let it be known to the 50 and 60-year-olds that we have something to offer. So I would respectfully request the articles that have been, or the warrants that have been asked for the hours. Emily Perkins serves 2 masters, the Aloka group and the Council on Aging. So she's half and half. We like to see the senior center be open more hours than less hours. The kitchen needs to be rehabbed, and the exhaust system is a sore spot. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Richard Elias, 608 Frank Smith Road. As I've sat through many of these sessions, especially the budget sessions, the cost of the maintenance of the athletic fields is a major topic. Our people that have to take care of them are cut thin, and then they're getting a request from everybody. This has to be done for this field. This has to be done for that field. As I was coming home tonight, past Picknelly Field, or whatever they call it for the baseball in Forest Park, I noticed all the signs that were there. This place did this for us, this place did that for us. I recognize the feeling of town people that it would not be in the best interest of the town to put up all signs like this. How many people here know 136 Forest Glen? If you go down Forest Glen, you see the top of a house. It's a pumping station. And you see a little sign, like a street sign. It says 136 Forest Glen. That's something that nobody ever notices. But if we had signs like that outside of an athletic field, sponsored by sponsored by whatever company or individual that wants to think. It's not going to hurt the town. It's going to help the town budget. It's going to help the people that want to use the fields. And there are poor people that have to go and try to please everybody. Second, and my last thing, because I know you people are in a bind tonight. Another thing that I found in the budget process over the years, it's always a problem, is you work so hard on the budget, and then you find out that this is going to be presented and that's going to be presented, and you start going crazy trying to put in how can this be done and that done in different phases. I know it can't be done for this town meeting coming up because of the specific time frame. But in the future, if anybody presents a request for the spending of funds, along with that request should be how we're going to get the money to pay for that. And not just, we need this, find the money for it. We don't have the money to just go and do that. I would like to have the people at the town meeting make the decision that if we approve this, we're not going to have that. And it'll take it off you folks, the responsibility of trying to do that. Because people go crazy trying to figure out some one of those things there.
Thank you.
Hi. Kathy Grady, 35 Roseland Terrace. In addition to speaking on behalf of extra hours for the director, it's not much for extra hours, but it's a step in the right direction. We do need a senior center that more broadly serves the seniors along Meadow. But I want to speak to the kitchen, which is in the capital plan. We have a great nutrition program down at the center. It serves up to 65 people a day in the center and another 50 or so on Meals on Wheels, which is everything. We have an on-site chef. Everything's cooked fresh. We have 2 sous chefs. The program itself is self-supporting. The donations of the diners and the state grants for nutrition programs cover all the basic costs. But what is not covered is the kitchen needs. The GSSI, the Greater Springfield Social Services, or whatever, came in, inspected the kitchen, and said it is not up to code. So we're in danger of losing our nutrition program, which is a crucial opportunity not only to give nutritional meals to seniors, or sell them actually, but also to provide a social environment for them. And one of the big goals for some advanced seniors to get them out of the house and to a place where they can be with friends and have a social thing and a great meal. In order to keep doing that, we have to have the kitchen rehabbed. It's in the capital plan. The capital planning committee approved it. It's about $52,000. I do hope the select board will approve it as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Greg McDonald. I'm at 29 Eunice Drive. I am the current president of Longmeadow Youth Lacrosse, and I am here tonight to support the warrant for the Wolf Swamp Fields. I don't know if you've had a chance to get by there on a nice spring night, but it's pretty packed. And there's a couple of backstops there that people really aren't using. And if we were able to get this through, they'd be able to pull those up, put more fields down, and help alleviate some of the pressure. And open up some field space for some of the kids to be able to play.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bill Hoff, 24 Pinewood Hills. Here on a couple things, both related to the Community Preservation Committee. First, I know the Select Board had some questions about the project that I submitted in the Riverfront Conservation Area, that in terms of permitting and things like that. And I will not be able to stay for your whole meeting, so I'm trying to answer those questions now. The answer is that, yes, there are permits required. I have done no investigation of how much those will cost, but if you look at the warrant article, it does require that we get the permits before we spend any money. So the money is protected from spending. If the permits are, I had a discussion with Mr. Crane the other day, if somebody's thrown out, they may be $30,000. Well, if it's $30,000, we're not doing this project. I mean, we wouldn't, as soon as you found that out, you just say, look, that's not worth it. But that leads me to my next point, which is, and I was a former chair of the Community Preservation Committee, I believe for 6 years. I can't remember exactly. But, the Community Preservation Committee is one of the outstanding committees in this town. These people, and having come now from the other side of it this year, they continue to do a great job of vetting these projects. They go through and they do the research, they check. They are very frugal with the town money. They go back, not only do they do the work of checking in advance, they make sure afterwards that the money is properly spent, which is not necessarily their responsibility, but they do it anyway, because they want to make sure the funds are spent properly. And I just encourage you to not spend a lot of time looking at what they do, because they've done the work. The questions you're asking me, they've taken care of because they looked at the project and said, wait a minute, what if the permits are too much? They put a restriction in there. They're very good at putting restrictions on to make sure that money is not wasted. So I just encourage you not to waste a lot of time on repeating what they've already done. They start in the fall. They work very hard. They do public hearings. They encourage people to come and they meet with these people at least once, usually twice. So let's let them do their work and not keep reinventing the wheel. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah.
Liz Bone, 34 Elizabeth Circle. I respectfully and genuinely request that the Select Board recommend all CPC projects go to town meeting so that the town's voters can make this legislative decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Margaret Rockus. I'm here as a member of the board of the Park and Rec Commission. I'm also here as the mother of a tennis player and a soccer player, and I play tennis myself. I would like to speak in favor of both the warrant for the tennis court renovations. I played varsity tennis in high school. It was my ticket out of a Rust Belt town that frankly had a lot of nice people, but I don't think anybody in Long Meadow would like to live there. The courts were better there than our courts here. I'm so sorry to say that. I walked those courts this fall before our Parks Commission voted to ask the CPC for funds for renovation. Several of the courts have, I would call, unplayable surfaces. I feel very sorry for our students, our high school students who are trying to play competitively. I understand they could move to Grand Meadows, but community recreation facilities are a way to bring people together who might not ordinarily meet. And there are many people in Long Meadow who like to play tennis after a tough day, and those courts, I can't imagine running for a shot and falling. It would just ruin your day, and that's where those courts are going. That renovation was supported 100% unanimously for the funds requested by the CPC, and it's the right thing to do for our community. The second, the Wolf Swamp Fields. What we thought we'd do as part of the park board was to look at a large project and then a small project. The Blinn tennis courts basically benefit many people in town, since you can play tennis from the age of about 5 to about 80. I remember being beaten when I was 20 by a 70-year-old, and that has stuck with me. The Wolf Swamp Fields are probably more of a under 60 kind of experience, certainly for soccer and lacrosse. But it's a small project. It too was approved unanimously, and what it will do is make more efficient use of already existing fields by taking out a couple of backstops that are there for softball, which can't be played safely there. That too was approved unanimously by the CPC. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is James Goodhines. I live at 78 Dover Road in Long Meadow, and I come to support the CPC petitions to fund the repairs to the Blinn tennis courts and to Wolf Swamp Fields. As a former member of the CPC and of the Park and Rec Board, this was a project we started years ago. We held a number of public meetings. We held opportunities for the members of the community, not only the soccer program, but also the lacrosse program, to give us feedback about what their major needs were. It seems pretty clear that even though we do have space, it isn't being used efficiently, as has already been discussed tonight. The whole point in making these changes that we started years ago was to give the opportunity for more kids to play sports in town. We've lost a number of kids to different programs, either in Springfield or East Long Meadow, because we don't have field space. And I know that the members of both of those committees who are here in strong support of this change will tell you that every minute that those fields are available in the spring and the fall is filled with kids, not only from their teams being signed up, but from parents trying to get out on those fields to just give them the time to play. It's a no-brainer. The softball field that's closest to the shed where the bathrooms are hasn't been used in over 10 years because of safety concerns. The softball field on the far end has been basically reduced to Sunday play for out-of-town programs from East Long Meadow. They've made a great use of the fields that we do have. I know that Barry has done some reconfiguration over at Glenbrook to allow softball and baseball to have enough fields. These two fields will allow more practice and play time, which is going to increase the number of people who actually play. I'm very passionate about youth sports. I think a lot of people that are in this room are. We'd like to see this go forward, since it did receive unanimous approval by the Park and Rec Board over the last several years and from the CPC on a unanimous vote, and urge you to support it and put it on the warrant. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Oh,
Good evening. Dave Fortowitz, 18 Circle Road, Vice Chair of the Park and Rec Commission. I'd like to echo the sentiments of the other Park Board commissioners and advocate for both projects, the Blinn Court project as well as the Wolf Swamp project. When I sat with you a year and a half ago wanting to be on this commission, I talked about efficiencies. And as Jim just pointed out, we'll gain efficiency by putting a little bit of an investment in the Wolf Swamp field. We can get more play out of more space. We've been lobbied by the sports entities in town. Again, it is a no-brainer. It's been unanimously supported by the CPC. We've spent a significant amount of time evaluating it. It just makes sense. When it comes to the courts, I'm going to echo the sentiment of Commissioner Rakis. There's a safety issue there. I mean, we closed one of those courts down simply because we were concerned about it. Commissioner Russell does his due diligence. He's out there regularly walking those courts, and frankly, they need some love. I think it's a no-brainer. The CPC was unanimous. I hope you'll support those projects.
thank you. Any other resident comments? No?
Can you turn the PA system on so we can hear back here?
There is no PA system. These are microphones for the TV. This room has no PA system.
Well, what's the speakers missing?
So
Thank you.
please speak up.
Good evening. My name is John Bowen. I'm a member of the Council on Aging and have been for a number of years. I'm here to echo the comments regarding Emily and the need for her hours. I mean, we're doing all kinds of new things, and there's a wonderful spirit at the Council on Aging right now, and we just couldn't continue to do them with a limitation on Emily's hours. It would be tragic if we were to lose her for the sake of 5 hours, because to the best of my knowledge, every other community in this area has a full-time director. So let's not cut short Long Meadow, and please give Emily the hours that she needs to do her job.
Thank you. Any other resident comments? Okay, any select board comments? All right, we will.
I got one question,
Hmm?
or one comment. It's, and I appreciate your comments, and I was emailed by more than a few people. And one of the things I just want everyone to understand is that when the select board asks a question of something, doesn't necessarily mean it's being denied. And, you know, there was a question that a couple questions I specifically asked about the Council on Aging hours and the kitchen project. And there was an email that went out today that severely misquoted what questions I had asked. I didn't say that the kitchen wasn't needed. I asked if we looked at using the food service through the Greater Springfield Senior Services, which offers meals that are pre-prepared and can be delivered. I asked what the cost of the grant was versus the purpose of the refrigerator, for example, in the kitchen renovation. Is it worth going through for the grant? Because it still passes physical inspection, okay, but it doesn't meet the standards of the grant. I didn't say that the kitchen wasn't needed. I didn't say that the hours weren't needed. What I asked for was, give me an explanation of what programs would be offered. We heard anecdotal evidence that people are at the door, and I heard anecdotal evidence people aren't at the door at 9 o'clock. So with all due respect to, the positions, and I understand it, that the select board shouldn't reinvent the wheel and so forth. That's part of our job, isn't necessarily to reinvent the wheel, but to ask questions. I have a question about the project at Wolf Swamp Fields, not whether they're needed. I've coached up there. If it wasn't for weeds, there'd be no grass. I get it. They're horrible. You can step in a hole in those fields. You can go down to the baseball field, and they're uneven. Okay, and it isn't the safest of playing conditions. But the questions that were asked were about, is it $35,000 worth of a project? And I think Mr. Foster pointed out that the amount of topsoil that would be used for the dollar amount that was being stated would cover the entire fields in 3 inches. So those were the kinds of questions. And I understand, the emails went out, I got them, I get it. I saw the postings on Facebook. It's wonderful that there's community. This is the largest attended meeting we've had probably in the last 2-3 years, and I think that's great. That's great. But understand, those were questions. I think those were questions that each of you would ask on the reverse side of it. I'd ask questions about the tennis courts. We were going through a 3-year phase of refurbishing tennis courts, 4 at a time, at a cost of $250,000 every time we did it. So every 3 years, those courts were being refurbished, 4 at a time, $250,000, $250,000, $250,000. Now the project's up to $750,000, which is a complete renovation of them, digging them up, taking them out. I think we have the ability, or we have the right to ask questions when the projects go from $250,000 a year, which we probably already spent between $500,000 and $1 million over the years for that particular courts to keep them up. Jim, it's the first time I heard you shut down a court. And I think that's terrible. This is the first time that I heard tonight that we actually shut down a court for safety reasons last year, because that puts it in a different perspective. Okay, and so I think the select board has a right to ask questions of any project that's presented to it. And I respect your questions. I respect your endorsement of articles, but also respect the right that we have the ability and should have the authority to do it on behalf of citizens. Because if I can't answer a question to someone when they come to me and say, why did you extend the Council on Aging hours, directors, by 5 hours? And I can't answer that, then I didn't do my job. And if I can't answer why we spend the $750,000 plus whatever it might be for the rehabilitation or actually the new courts that'll go in, then I'm not doing my job. Because you should be able to corner me at the mobile station like some of you do, or Big Y, and ask me why. And if I can't answer it, then I didn't serve you. So understand, I appreciate your comments, but also I hope you appreciate the fact that we should be doing our due diligence.
Thank you. Any other select board comments? Okay, I think we're going to skip through the minutes, and I'd like to go straight to the warrant so we can, because that has to be done today. What I was looking at was trying to do some of these together, and I'm looking for a motion to approve and set Articles 1 through 9, and then I thought we would get that on, the motion seconded, and then we could have discussion. And
Do you really want to do them in that piece? It takes us longer to figure it out.
well, actually, let's start with a motion for Articles 1 through 5. Is there a motion? No. Okay, a motion for Article 1.
I'll move we approve Article 1 as
A second?
Second.
Any discussion? No? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
A motion for Article 2.
I move we approve Article 2 as stated for payment of prior year bills.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion?
No.
All those in favor? Motion for Article 3.
Yeah, I guess my question before I make a motion, Mr. Pasturzik, is, do we know 225 is the final number? And I guess because it says to a greater or lesser extent, we may be adjusting that?
Probably would adjust it. Right now, we're just under 200,000.
Okay. I'll move that we approve Article 3.
Second. There you go.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Now, I understand that Article 5 is being removed?
I'm sorry.
We're
on 4.
Oh, I thought we'd done, okay, a motion for Article 4?
I'll move we approve Article 4.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Yeah, I think we need an explanation, certainly before it goes before the town meeting, just to explain why we're doing this, and we've never done it before. This is to approve for people who are watching, to approve the town to enter agreements with other cities and towns in the Commonwealth, as well as contiguous cities and towns in Connecticut to provide mutual aid programs.
If I remember, the town manager did
Right, I just
give an
think
answer to that?
Right, we got one, but I think if we're going to have people at town meeting vote on it, they need some explanation or some.
We can add some verbiage
That's all.
and explanation.
Okay.
I just think it needs one.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Article 5, I understand, is no longer going to be on the warrant?
Oh, no, it's gone. This is a new Article 5.
Oh, this is a new Article 5, okay. Oh, I see. Okay,
Wait a
a
minute.
motion,
Wait a minute.
To approve
Let's be clear which 5 we're talking about.
okay, the new
Is the
draft
water,
that she gave us.
water
Retained
retained
earnings.
earnings?
Correct. That is
Okay.
correct.
Mm.
All right.
Is there a motion to approve
Yeah,
Article 5?
I'll move to approve Article 5, which is to transfer money from water retained earnings to cover the higher than budgeted charges from Springfield for water.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Mr. Prasturzik, if I can ask you a question, the $150,000, looking at potential water usage for this current year, what we're talking about taking out of the retained earnings, our water usage is lower than where it has been month to date from previous year? So our estimates are off?
Our revenue estimates are running a little bit short, yeah.
Okay, and this isn't to cover those revenue estimates that are short, it's only to cover the increase in charges, correct?
Correct. This is to cover the Springfield portion of it.
All right, so my next question is, when we come time to look at the year-end revenue, are we going to have an additional shortage because our projections are lower than, our usage is lower than projections?
We may close out a slight loss at the end of the fiscal year because of the revenue shortfall.
Okay, how slight? And I know there'll be a lot of months between now and then, but,
50,000, somewhere in that vicinity.
Okay. and then my question to that is, then how are we going to handle the $50,000 loss, or loss of projected revenue? Is it just going to be an increased water rates that we're going to set, or are we going to go to fall town meeting looking for another $50,000?
That $50,000 would be close into the current surplus. There's a current surplus right now of $470,000. We're going to take the 150 out, leaving 320, and when we close out at the end of June 30th, if we end up with that 50 short, we'll have a fund balance of 270.
Out of the retained earnings?
Correct.
Okay.
It's going to be closed out into retained earnings.
And we don't need an action at town meeting to take out the
We would not need an
50,000?
action at town meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of Article 5?
Aye.
Okay, a motion for Article 6?
I'll move we approve Article 6 for transfer of funds to cover unemployment charges in 2014.
Second? Discussion?
Yep, question. Paul, why is there a $35,000 estimate? Is there more people on unemployment, or is it because of extensions?
We got hit during the fiscal year with a number of retroactive unemployment costs that were totally unexpected. It was because of the federal government's extension or whatever. That was a part of it, and we also have a number of employees who are collecting the full benefits. So I think it's really a combination of the two that we're over by this amount.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
How do we want to do Article 7?
Well, actually, what we should probably do is when we go to discuss the budget, the articles in regards to the budget are, we'll skip 7, and what I was going to do is to go down to the, because what's going to take a lot of time is to go through the budget and then also going through the bylaw ones. So I wanted to go down and finish the warrant and then go back when we do the budget and the capital and the bylaw we'll do when.
All right. Can I suggest that we approve Article 7, subject to the numbers that will be approved by the town, by the select board and our budget review, and that way we can get the wording and the framework and all the other parts of it into the...
And then we'll go back to it.
We'll go, well, if we approve it, subject to the numbers to go in there based on our budget recommendation, and we've approved the budget article, the warrant article, excuse me.
We can do that, but
I'm not sure what, I mean, Article 7 has the salary for the moderator and the select board members, and then it addresses the amount of the budget. I mean, those are the 3 items. Obviously, the first 2 are fairly they're the same thing every year. So I'm not sure what we'd be voting for. I mean, there's a blank there. I mean, I'm not sure I want to vote for a blank.
Well, we have to set it today, and so there will be some, it's like a placeholder, and so the placeholder will be put in.
But what are we accomplishing by having a blank?
We're required to set the warrant today.
No, actually, I don't think that's strictly true. I mean, we have certain deadlines that back up from the Springtown meeting, and there's a certain amount of time the Finance Committee has to have it, and publication and that sort of thing. I mean, but I've never understood that this was a absolute, positively hard and fast thing.
Paul, can you answer that? Do we need to set the warrant tonight?
It's not an absolute drop dead date. Again, Mr. Grant is correct. It's a timetable working backwards. I don't know how much pressure it puts on Deb because it does have to be printed, but I would assume that there might be a little more time.
But we traditionally, what we usually do is we set the warrant and then we finish up the budget and that number's put in. So that would be doing things a little differently. If you want to skip 7, why don't we continue what I was going to do, which is try to clean up the rest of the warrant, and then we'll move forward back to the budget and the capital plan.
I would think that, I mean, I guess the point is, if the whole point is that we've got to be able to print something and send out to residents, which I get, obviously, nobody's going to print anything until that number's in there.
So then
right?
you agree with me, we should skip that and move on to the rest of the warrant?
Yes.
Okay. So what I'd like to do is to, we can move on to Article 8. And then I was going to skip down to the CPC one. Is there a motion to approve Article 8?
I move we approve Article 8 to appropriate funds for salary settlements.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
I guess the only question I have, Paul, is, just Mr. Prsterzik, this is for the police and DPW and the clerical, no?
Only one union that's unsettled right now, that's the supervisor's.
Oh, this is our supervisor's money that we're putting aside. Okay.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right. Let's go down to, I wanted to skip the bylaw ones. So, yes, I want to skip down and get the others done because we need to be working with, the others are going to be very long with Dave Martell. So on Article 11.
Well, can I just ask that the board actually, since we're going out of order, is that the board, it's not a chair decision, it should be a board decision, quite frankly. And if we want to go in order, I'd ask that the chair ask the board, or skip order, that the chair ask the board to put a motion out there to skip the order.
I don't really know if that's required a motion. The board really, okay, what is the general feeling on the board on skipping the bylaws so we can work with Dave Martell and we'll get through the rest of the warrant, such as the CPC and the citizens partition, and then the residents who are sitting here waiting to see how we're going to deal with the CPC will not have to sit while we talk for an hour or more on a bylaw change.
I favor us going to the CPC. I don't think there's anything hard and fast. I mean, had it been printed differently, I mean, I don't think there's anything that says we have to discuss these in any particular order.
Richard, how do you feel about it?
I'm 50-50. It doesn't matter to me.
Mark?
Other than the fact that I'd like to have a lot of people in the audience, no, I'm
Yeah.
fine. Changing the order.
Okay.
I think,
No, thank you, that's all I was looking for, is that there was a
Okay.
discussion, okay.
yeah,
Okay, so, motion for Article 11 on the revolving fund for the school.
I move we approve Article 11, just so people know this is an annual item we have that has to do with vending machine income.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Article 12 is, I'm looking for a motion for Article 12.
I'll take it, I'll move that we approve Article 12 as written.
Which is about the CPC fund of money for their trust fund and administrative costs. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
I just have one question, and I know Mr. Weiss is here. Administrative costs, it talks about they've been roughly about $2,500 a year or so. I know there was a job posting for a secretarial type of position. Do we anticipate that most of that $8,000 being utilized, or would it still be in fact what it looks like, in prior years?
Stephen White, excuse me, 18 Pioneer
Thank you for
Drive.
coming up.
It's probably going to be about the same. It's just that Ms. Staples has indicated she's been doing our work for a number of years, and she's indicated that she would like us to find a replacement. So I don't anticipate that it's going to be any material increase.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
I'm looking for a motion for Article 13 on the Blinn Tennis Courts.
I move we approve the funding for Article 13, which is to fund $375,000 from community preservation for the third funding phase of the Blinn Tennis Courts.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Richard.
yeah, obviously, there's a lot of support for these projects in here. It's kind of an amazing thing when you really see how our democracy works. I know about 7 months ago, I presented something to public TV on infrastructure in our community. I outlined $300 million worth of deficiencies, known deficiencies, compounded with pictures and everything, and talked about it. And as a result of doing it on public TV, having it recorded and shown likely 50 times with the local TV station, doing it at the Council of Aging, and also doing it in front of this select board when it was put to the select board and public TV that night, so it went out live. I received one phone call and one email. $300 million worth of noted deficiencies in our community, and it was only 2 people that had any concern for that issue whatsoever. I received over 25 emails today on a $30,000 project in our community. Now, you can sit and support, and I think it's great, but we're unequally supporting a lot of these things. There's a lot of things being placed before us. You've questioned, or there's been kind of questions about why we ask questions about things. Well, we have a large plate of projects in front of us. We're going to ask a lot of questions. I can ask right back to you, where was the support that's in this room tonight when we talked about $300 million worth of deficiencies in your community that are not being taken care of? I think it's a shame you closed the tennis courts. It's absurd. But why don't we ask why they were closed? Because they weren't maintained. Clear and simple, they weren't maintained. They haven't been maintained properly for years. It's a harsh environment. It needs maintenance. We know it needs maintenance. We have people to do maintenance. We have programs that can get money to do the maintenance, and it's never come forward. This particular program started out when I was on Capital Planning Committee at, I believe, a little under $100,000. I believe today, I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was $120,000. And it has grown now to $750,000, and it's been installed. It's got 3 installments going on it now. And this money's been tied up, I don't know how long now, 3 or 4 years getting to this part in the process. And we have given this a lot of consideration and a lot of thought on how to best do it. And I just wanted to, before we vote, I just wanted to share my feelings with you people and everybody listening to this broadcast tonight. This brought the fever out of everybody for $30,000 Wolf Swamp Field, for 5 more hours for the Director of Council on Aging in her position, And yet there's a $300 million goose egg sitting out there and nobody seems to care. So maybe you should question yourself tonight on the priorities for our community. I know every member of this board is concerned about all of the priorities in our community. It is a large plate to be able to fit stuff on. Thank you.
Any other discussion on Article 13?
My question is, to Richard's point, as this project has creeped up in size and scope, and originally we went from overlaying the courts or refurbishing them to now a complete rehab, because the descriptor in here talks about the lighting being bad, and yet, I agree with Richard in terms of priorities. I know this has the votes to go to the town meeting, and it should. My question for the DPW director is, since Park and Rec director isn't here, is that, is this the best and final number, and is that all we're going to see with it, or is $750 adequate to do all of that work?
I think it's $675, not $750, and yes, we expect that to be the full number. And just to the point that Mr. Foster brought up, that 120,000 years ago was to replace the rubberized surface. It was fix the cracks and resurface, which is a paint job. And that's vastly different from what is proposed. It's ripping everything on the ground, new asphalt, new fencing, new lighting.
Any other discussions or questions? Alex?
Well, I'm going to speak in favor of it. And part of it is that I think as a select board member, I owe a certain duty of deference to the work that's been done by the CPA Commission. And I know that they spend a lot of time on it. Now, that doesn't mean that I suspend my independent judgment, but I see nothing wrong with it. The rationale behind it seems sound. I've personally played there a few times. I've seen the condition of it. I don't think anybody could say this is a boondoggle. So, I'm also confident that people are going to use these courts a lot. One of the things that's been discussed before the select board was just the idea of the Bay Path students, Bay Path team playing there, and there was some discussion about us getting some revenue from that. I believe that's happened. So to me, that speaks to, if a college team wants to play there, and a high school team wants to play there, and people in the community want to play there, there's a lot of value behind it. So I think that's going to be money well spent.
Mark?
Yeah, I'm going to speak also in favor of the article, although, and I appreciate the many emails that I got. I think I probably got the same ones everybody else on the select board got, expressing an interest from this, and from most of them that I responded to, I indicated that nevertheless I have a problem with the process, and that's why we are where we are today instead of where we probably ought to be. The process for this, very honestly, stunk. And it stunk because we snuck up on it. Instead of saying we've got a problem and here's what it's going to cost, we've had money literally sitting unused for all the needs that, as Richard mentioned, that we need in this town. We've had hundreds of thousands of dollars sitting unused because 3 years ago we were told it would take $200,000 to $250,000 to do these courts. And then 2 years ago we were told, well, for only another $200,000 we can do these courts. And now this year we're being told for only another $300,000 or $325,000 we can do these courts. Any of you sitting in our shoes with that history would probably have the same or express some of the same skepticism we have. And the question simply has been, is this it? Are we going to come back and say, gee, we found something, it can't be done, we need another $325,000? And it's not the fact that we may need more money. It's the fact that we could have been doing a lot of other things that desperately need to be done with the money that's been sitting in a special account waiting for us to figure out what this is really going to cost. So, I support this, but we've got to figure out a way to do this for these costs. I'm hoping that we get the things that we said we were going to do. Lighting that goes off when people leave so the lights aren't on all night, all the things people complain about who are in the neighborhood. A tennis facility that matches the quality of the tennis clubs and tennis teams that we have in our high school. and facilities for our town residents. So, you know, I support this wholeheartedly, but the process is, you know, as they say, sometimes you don't want to go through the process of figuring out how they make sausage, but at the end you want to eat, and at the end we want the tennis courts, but the process on this really stunk.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? I understand what you're saying. It kind of seemed like you were speaking against the article and then you're in favor wholeheartedly. And my question is, are you confident with, because you're going to vote for this, obviously, is that you're confident with the dollar amount?
I'm only as confident as the people who are telling me, and so the answer is, I was confident last year, you know, but I'll tell you, and since we're in public, I'll tell everybody, you know, about 10 years ago, I was on the Capital Planning Committee, and I was the chair of the Capital Planning Committee, and we went through a similar thing with buying a piece of equipment, and the money sat around for the second, and when they came back the third time, the Capital Planning Committee not only said no, but we withdrew the money that we had put aside and reallocated it to something else. My commitment to the board and my statement to the rest of the town is, if this comes back for another $50,000 next year, I, for one, am going to ask that we pull all the money out of this and reallocate it, because that means we really don't know what we're doing. So if that's the answer you want, that's the answer I'm going to
Okay.
That's at least my approach to this.
I think everyone's spoken on the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay. Let's move on to Article 14, and which is the CPA project for the high school track. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve Article 14 is written.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Trying to get a discussion.
I didn't hear
It's already
that.
been
I'm
voted on, so
sorry.
it's gone.
Okay. If we put, I don't see to us, be sure it got like that. Okay,
You might need
motion.
to wait a nanosecond.
There you go. Article 15, Community Preservation Project on Wolf Swamp Fields. Is there a motion?
I'll move we approve Article 15.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
I was trying to clear it before. I don't want anybody in this room to think I'm against tennis courts. I have a grandson that likely plays more tennis than all of you combined in this room every week. I was like Mark. It was the process, and I was also involved in capital planning. I saw this thing evolving, and we were unable to get answers. So that's where the frustration is at. It's not the need or benefit of courts or whether we have, and I think there's a recognized need in our community for the courts. This issue here is the same thing as came up. We've asked questions, and we've not been able to get answers. And we've asked them several times for somebody to talk about what we were going to do for the $35,000 besides just spend the $35,000. And it was listed, I think, on Mike's thing as topsoil, lime, fertilizer, seed. And we were more or less asking some of the details on it and what it implied. And that's the only questions that we had. And I think it was fair that we received an answer on that. I think it's fair that we should ask those questions before we obligate taxpayers' dollars. That's the reason the questions come out, and that's the reason these questions come out, because it was just a $35,000 request for exactly what I said: topsoil, seed, fertilizer, and lime. No quantities, no definition of what we were going to do, no scope of work. It was just a blank slate. Thank you, Marie.
Any other? Mark?
Yeah, most people may recall that last year there was a similar but different article about Wolf Swamp Fields. I believe the amount of money was multiples of this $35,000, and I think it might be fair to characterize that I took the lead in opposing that at that time, much to the consternation of many other people. It tended to combine a lot of things, and rather than go backwards, I'll look forward. I think, again, in response to some of the emails, I told people that I'm not really excited about how we came to this $35,000 figure, and I understand that the CPA, I guess, did their due diligence, but, you know, if Mr. Foster with, you know, either a quick phone call or a click on the internet was able to determine the amount of loam that was put in this thing could cover all the fields to a depth of 3 inches, then there's something that we needed to do. And so I hope that this comes in somewhat below $35,000. Clearly, we need more fields, and so I'm going to support it. But I will also say one other thing, and I think Mr. Russell addressed it earlier in the evening, and that was amongst the emails we got today were, and yesterday, were reference to this being phase one of the renovations to Wolf Swamp Fields. And all of a sudden, I had this flashback to last year where we're gonna put up 35-foot fencing and we're gonna redo the parking lot and all this kind of stuff for, under the guise of, well, it's only the first phase. And again, if we know what we're gonna do, we ought to come forward and say, here's what we're gonna do for the fields. And if we have no intention of doing it, then we have no intention of doing it, and this makes a whole lot of sense. But I'm gonna be really disappointed. I think everybody should be really disappointed if we turn around and say, well, we were just trying to piecemeal it because we knew we couldn't get the whole package through either town meeting or through the select board. So I'm a little bit cautious, but I'm gonna take this at its word that this is as far as we're going, and vote for it.
Any other discussion?
I have one, I'm sorry if Alex wants to go, but.
Go ahead.
The question I have is, as Mark was saying, we had a layout last year of, and maybe one of you guys from Park and Rec can answer, or one of the board members can, that, there was going to be fencing to protect the ball from going out into the parking lots, and I pulled up something that I had of showing that there would actually be 8 fields now for soccer and lacrosse. And I'm not sure, and the Park and Rec director's not here, so I can't ask her the question, but if on the park board is, the fields, the way they looked on that drawing are going to be north-south as opposed to east-west, because we're told the sun and eyes and that type of thing. Do you perceive an issue of those fields having, especially for lacrosse, balls going out into the parking lot, or are they going to be far enough away from the fencing to where that's not going to happen? If someone from Park and Rec could, I would actually rather have the Park and Rec board members answer that one.
I don't know the exact details, so I cannot give you an answer.
Okay. All right, thank you, fair enough.
Alex?
Well, I was just going to say, I am pretty aware of the need for additional space. I've been a soccer coach for my daughter's team, and I know on Sunday afternoon the place is packed. And this seems to be true for almost every sports association we have in town. Basketball is the same thing, and we're always jockeying for space. And unfortunately, we don't have a lot of space in this town. There's not a lot of new space we can create. This seems to me to be a pretty low-cost way of creating more space for the activities that we are doing. I think the Long Meadow Soccer Association person said there were 800 soccer players. I didn't know it was that number. I knew it was huge. I do recall when my daughter was doing kindergarten soccer, I figured it out that 1 in every 2 kindergartners in town was playing soccer in that league, which was amazing to me. So I'm not that concerned about the cost of it, because it seems modest compared to the alternatives in creating more space. I'm sure if we were to clear land or try to acquire new land, the cost would be multiples of this project.
All right. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay. Moving on to the, let's see.
I'll move we approve Article 16 for the improvements to the, I was gonna say the stage, but I guess it's got some fancier name to it, for the Long Meadow Community House.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? No? All those in favor?
Aye.
Pardon?
Richard didn't vote for it.
Oh, all those opposed? Okay, all those opposed? Okay, Article 17, in regard to the Long Meadow Cemetery project. Is there a motion?
I'll move we approve Article 17.
Second.
Discussion?
I've got a question. Mr. Gold brought up a point at our last meeting about public-private type of projects such as this. And I think my question is more centered around, I understand this is a use of community preservation under the rules and laws, and I know that the Community Preservation Committee looked at that. My concern is when you're talking about an entity that potentially, I don't know what the revenues are of the Cemetery Association or not, but
what they have in their fund balances and that type of thing, but my concern is we're kind of blending this, and I know some private projects were denied because of that, and my concern is that we're looking at a private entity, not a public entity, that is use of money, and I know it's allowed. I'm just expressing a concern.
Mark?
Obviously, I had the same concern. My approach is, let's put this before the town voters and let's see what they think about it, so that's why I'm going to support it.
Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor? Opposed? Okay. Moving on to Article 18.
I move we approve Article 18 for the community preservation funds for the installation of docks on Connecticut River.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. Mark?
Yeah, earlier this evening, Mr. Hoff noted that there was a condition in here that would prevent us from doing this if the permitting was excessive, but actually the motion says, it just says, it's a condition of this appropriation that all necessary permits be obtained before acquiring any equipment or take any other action thereof. And I just hate to see this go before a town meeting and fail because somebody stands up and says the permitting's $30,000. And that's the first I'd heard about this tonight, that the permitting could be $30,000. I think it seems excessive, but nevertheless, you know.
Massachusetts.
Okay. Wouldn't it be worthwhile if we could somehow put in here an upper limit, and maybe Mr. Weiss could just note if they had some other discussion about the amount of if the cost of the permit exceeds the cost of the project, do we want to do it, or 50% of the cost of the project, or whatever it is? Because right now it just says it's conditioned upon getting a permit. So if permit's very high, it says go get the permit and then we'll do the project.
I think the problem is we don't know what the permit, I don't think anybody really knows what the permitting costs are, but with everything from the Army Corps of Engineers to, there were a couple other, I think, I forget how many different permits that might be necessary. If it turns out to be prohibitive, I don't think the funds will be spent. I mean, but at the moment, I think Mr. Hoff has not investigated how much all those permits are going to cost. I mean, it may be $25 a piece, but if there's something exorbitant, then
Right, but my question is that this doesn't say if the cost of the permitting is excessive. It just says we must get the permits first. And it actually says it's conditioned upon all permits be obtained. So that really says the town would go out and get the permits. It doesn't say depending on the cost, or don't get them and so I'm concerned that this almost obligates the town to. All I'm asking, Steve, is there a way that we could put in here, what the CPA's conception was of excessive? If it exceeds 50% of the cost of the project, or 20% of the cost of the project, or 100% of the cost of the project, or $50 or whatever it is.
I don't think I can't speak for the whole CPC because they're not here tonight, but I think our conception was we don't really know exactly what the costs are, but nobody's going to, in order for those permits to be obtained, I think what's going to happen is Mr. Hoff is going to, if this gets approved, and I hope it does get approved by this board, so it can, maybe by town meeting we can have some more information, but at least find out what the costs are and before spending any money on them. If it turns out that the permits are, I'm going to make up a number, $300, $500, well, then I don't think there's much question that the town would think that might be worthwhile. But if they're $30,000, then it just, and that number is made up in air. We really don't know what the numbers are. But at least this way, if this gets approved tonight, gets put on the warrant tonight, I think Bill will probably start that process of trying to find out just what those costs are. It won't cost any money to anybody until then, certainly.
Right. I had that concern myself. I mean, I would be much more enthusiastic about this project if I knew that the permits could be had and how much they could be had for. I mean, obviously there are extremes at both ends. If it's 30,000, it's not feasible. If it's 25, it is. But I would actually have concerns even if it was $3,000. I mean, because that would be a rather significant sum of the total amount appropriated, and that perhaps the docks as conceived could not be implemented. I must say that really does give me some pause. And I do understand that at this juncture, we're not going to get that information. So that's a problem for me. I think it may behoove us to amend this slightly to talk about what the upper limit ought to be, so that the number, because I would hate to have us spend $5,000 or $6,000 on permits and then not really implement the program as it was conceived. So that's a concern I have about this article.
That's a question. Steve, the number here for 11,700, that's for the construction of the boat docks, the security, because it described fencing around the boats and so forth.
Yeah, well, actually, I think it was amended downward. I don't think there's going to be fencing around there now.
Okay.
When it was first started, what Bill was proposing was that there would be some storage units down there, and that there would be fencing around there for security. Now it's just to put in these removable docks.
Okay, so that did not include the permit and fees in your or the estimates that were delivered that the CPC approved?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and I guess if I could just address Mr. Grant, I think Bill, and I have to say Bill's a good friend of mine, but I think his conception was he'd like to know that there's money available to do these things, and then he'll go out and find out what the costs are for the permitting, rather than go out and try to find out what all the costs for all the 5 or 6, 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 permits are, and not know whether there's any money to fund the docks.
Mark?
I guess, and I don't know, now that we have our town attorney here, well, I'll put him on the spot and say, you know, if the town were to pass an article that is worded this way, it says the town will vote to fund, you know, with the condition that the permits will be obtained, do we then have the option to not do that if it's been passed and the you know, that's my sense, is that if it's passed, that becomes an obligation of the executive branch of the government to execute what the legislative body passed, and it doesn't, without that, we just got to go do it, as opposed to saying, well, the costs are a little high, and we, you know, with all due respect, I don't think we have the authority to then not do it. And Mr. Martell is
if they obtain the permits, it's going to, in my opinion, that the permit would come out of the 11.7. The cost of the permit would come out of the 11.7, and then is the amount that's left enough to do the job? And that's the concern that's been expressed.
Mark, would you be more comfortable with them saying to install docks and that this has, the 11,000 has to include the permit costs?
well, I think what we heard was that their original estimate, it didn't include the permit cost. I think that's an unfair
I'm going back and check
requirement,
right now,
but, I mean, I'd rather put down a condition of appropriations that permits don't exceed, pick a number, 10% or 15, whatever we want to do of the overall project, and then all costs come out of the CPA funds. But that's just me, and I don't speak for the whole board. But I think we ought to set an upper limit on the permit cost and require that it comes out of CPA funds.
And I did misspeak. When I looked at the budget, it did provide for $2,500 for permitting in the original application. So I think that the $11,700 now does include a budget for that.
Marie, can I ask a question more of, if this project gets approved, who's actually filing for the permit? Would it be Mr. Hoff or would it be the town?
I believe it would be Mr. Hoff. I don't know if we have an obligation that we have to
Well, that's what
apply for, but
do we have an
it's
obligation?
it's certainly a citizen's, project request to the Community Preservation Act. It's not a town request.
Okay, thank you.
Maureen, I'd like to make a motion to amend Article 18. And so the language I'd like to add is in the final sentence where it says, "It is a condition of this appropriation that all necessary permits be obtained before acquiring any permit, comma," and then the amendment, I would...
Any permit?
Before acquiring any...
Equipment, it says.
That's what it says.
No, but
ours
you
says
said-
before acquiring any equipment.
You're saying all necessary permits must be obtained before acquiring any permits?
I'm sorry, is that what I said?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, before any equipment.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mhm.
comma, and then the language that I would suggest, this is the subject of my motion, with such permits paid for from the appropriated amount and with such permits not exceeding $2,500, comma, or take any other action relative thereto. So therefore, it makes it clear that the permit cost comes from the appropriated amount, and that if the permit costs are excessive, then the project would not go forward.
Actually, I have a question, Alex. Why do we say 2,500 is, maybe it's 2,550? I mean, I think that as long as the permits come out of 11,700, and it's going to be clear that if it's going to be, they won't be able to afford the docks because it's so expensive, I would not micromanage what is considered an appropriate fee and not.
Well, I guess my point is that if the permits really did cost $8,000, if I knew right now that the permits cost $8,000 and we'd be spending $3,700 on a smaller project, I wouldn't be in favor of it. So, I mean, to me, this language just makes it clear that the project as it was conceived is carried out.
Well, then you're going to change it to 2,500 to 8,000? Not to
No.
exceed 8,000?
No, I'm saying not exceeding $2,500. That's my motion.
Can I ask a question?
Steve.
In relation to the, do you want to wait for a second and then I'll ask a question?
No,
Because it may weigh into the wording, because if I
Okay.
hear what you're getting to, I think if I heard what the Chairman Weiss said, and I heard in my conversation with Mr. Hoff, I think it's, they don't know what the permitting is going to cost, so they wanted to see if the funds were there before they engaged in the probably lengthy and time-consuming effort. As I explained to Mr. Hoff, that's not exactly how I would have gone about it, but he, as a citizen applying to CPC, and he's within his rights to do that, and they're within their rights to fund the project with that contingency. And so if I put these pieces together, what I understand is we don't want the permit fees to cost additional funds from either the town or the Community Preservation Act funds. So perhaps if we're going to limit it in some way, if the committee responsible for the oversight of the funds feels like $11,700 is a reasonable amount for the project, and the permitting comes back at $10,000, but Mr. Hoff and other proponents of the project feel like they can raise that money privately and they want to go ahead, so long as the exposure to the Community Preservation Act funds and/or the town is still that 11.7, then the project can go forward with no additional financial commitment. I mean, is that what we're trying to get to, where we're not? Because I think, to the point I've heard in a few other projects, we don't want them coming back in here next year, or I think the preference would be, right, to not come back here for more money for permitting.
Right, or perhaps they do half the project because the permits are so expensive.
Right.
And you end up with a project that actually nobody really intended.
Right, and I think the point of my attempt to clarify is, if they have the opportunity to raise the funds privately or go to a different, like go to a U.S. Audubon Society or someplace else that will give them the funds privately or through a grant to get the permits, is that something the board would want to leave as an option?
Yeah, just maybe if it's okay, if I just kind of supplement that a little bit. The way the CPA funds work is, we would, Mr. Hoff's project would be limited to $11,700 from CPA funds. If, to use an example here, it costs $10,000 to get all the permits necessary, but there are other citizens of the town, whether it's the kayak club or any other, or conservation commission, they wouldn't do that. But if there are any private individuals that would be willing to front that money, as long as it's not coming out of the CPA funds, then it still gets done, and it's still within the CPA Act, and it doesn't cost the town any money.
Marie? I'm sorry, Richard, you want to?
Oh, Richard?
Yeah, she never looks down this way.
Well, very subtle,
Yeah,
too
very
subtle for me.
I had a question. It really wasn't so much for what you guys were doing, but there was a question asked, and I don't know if we ever had the answer, because I think everyone must understand, this is a very odd situation where you're going to put something down there from a petition that this man's going to have to maintain.
Well, it was my understanding, and Mike Rabel can correct me if I'm wrong, that they go down there already anyway. this is already space that's monitored by DPW. They empty the trash cans, they monitor it. I think they cut the lawns or whatever. So this wouldn't change any of that. It would mean once a year, or twice a year, I guess. In the spring, they would put the docks in, which is just sliding them along the ground, I think. And in the fall, they would pull them out. I think that's essentially correct.
I wasn't even sure that we were going to install to take the docks out. I was just asked if we would supply concrete to put around the poles for the racks to put the canoes or kayaks.
And now those racks aren't even being put there, so.
So is the Director of Public Works is stating this has zero impact on his organization?
No, I didn't say that at all. Right now, we go down there every 3 weeks or so and cut the grass. It's very, very low impact. So anything that goes to increase that, depending on the usage of this facility, would be an increase in demand for services from us. I have no idea how to gauge. I didn't get any information, any further information, as far as how much more activity this would draw down to that facility.
Right.
I think the question is who's going to own the dock? Who's going to own the dock?
I didn't even have that question, but that's a good one.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
think I think the town would own the docks. Yeah, and what Bill's talking about is these portable or movable aluminum docks, but I think those would be town property, be getting purchased with town money.
Or Community Preservation Act?
Yeah, well, yes.
Okay.
Marie?
Paul?
First, I'm going to second Alex's motion, and then I would just, a couple of comments. Questions, when you talked about the budget of not exceeding $2,500 of the permit, with the CPA law, does that hold this process true? Meaning, let's just say, for example, what Alex mentioned, the permits came in at $8,000. With the passage of this, does the applicant have to stick to the budget that was submitted, or can they say, well, it cost $8,000, we had $11,700, and potentially?
They do not have to stick specifically to a budget because, and I'll use an example of one that was actually rejected for this year, so it doesn't cause any controversy. There was an application at one point for the Greenwood Park pool, and it was rejected. Well, what we had from Mike Rabel and Yam Lip were estimates, good faith estimates, but it might turn, and I think, I'm going by memory, the number I think was $170,000. It might turn out that it costs an extra $1,000 for the pump. It might be $1,000 less, or something for cement. But they're not limited that way. What they're limited to is a total dollar amount. And anything that they don't use, so to use that example, if it costs $200,000, CPA is still funding $177,000. If it costs at the end of the day $150,000, $27,000 comes back. But especially because a lot of this is based on estimates, we don't hold them to an absolute line item by line item.
Okay, thank you. And then my other comment is, Stephen, that's a great question of who owns them. What's the potential for liability? And I think these are, when someone says don't reinvent the wheel, I think this is a perfect example of why we have the right to question these things on behalf of the residents, because I just assumed that CPA owned them, but the CPC, which is, it's the town. So there are some issues, I would imagine, with liability, since we would own docks, that we aren't thinking about. And maintenance issues that potentially are there that we're not thinking about. And if the project expands at some point to include more and more options down there, those are considerations, I think, that they're not considerations that we thought of right now, but I think that just a question of who owns them is a great question. And I mean, I'm concerned about, the permitting costs, but I know if they go over 11.7, the project can't be done anyway. I mean, I'm less concerned about them that way, but if, I'm willing to vote for this, to put it on the warrant, or put it on for town meeting and let people discuss it at that point.
Any more discussion on the amendment? No. All right, we're going to vote on the amendment first. All those in favor of the amendment to limit the permit costs? All those opposed? Okay. Now we'll go to the article.
Amended Article 18.
The amended Article 18. All those in favor of the amended Article 18? Opposed? Okay.
You're looking this way now, that's
I
good.
did. I try to see.
Good, I got you looking
But
this way.
you give me tricks. You give me
Okay.
little hand motions. Okay, and I'm looking for a motion on Article 19 on the town records
I move
preservation.
To approve Article 19 as written.
Second.
All right, any discussion?
My only discussion is what I think we had. I'd like to know how much it is and maybe even put more into it, that's all. And then I think we talked about it that night.
Yeah, well, in fairness, and to respond to, I think, some of your concerns before, I would not be surprised that, there was an application that was done a couple of years ago. This is an application, once we now have an idea of what records need to be preserved and how they need to be preserved, this may be the starting point. And I wouldn't be surprised if next year or the year after there is a request for additional funds, because it could be, as the town digs into this, and the record, there's a huge volume of records, and we have to figure out where to put them and all of that. It could easily be a much larger project.
Yeah, well, I would certainly encourage that you fast-track that research to find out how much money needs to be spent so we can get it spent and preserve the records. I guess that was my point.
Okay.
They have a mystic way of something happening.
Well, a point well taken.
Yeah.
Any other discussion?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Article 20,
I move to approve Article 20 as written.
and that's about the preservation of the storehouse.
Second.
Any discussion?
No, I do, and we discussed this a little bit, because Richard had brought this up. As I was going back over these capital projects, one of the projects that was not recommended was the ramps at the storehouse and our ADA compliance issue. And I must say, I mean, I love library, and I mean, this seems like a worthy project. It wasn't clear to me, though, that if you're dealing with ADA compliance, whether this, rises above it.
Let me make a correction. This is the storehouse, which is the museum next door to the library.
Well, I guess I understand your point, but I mean, it's, it's related to the library. I mean, and it's a matter of setting priorities. And, I mean, obviously, this is useful, but when you're talking about something like the ramps, that seems to, be in the realm of necessary.
All right, any other discussion on the Stores Library restoration?
No, I just want to say, Alex, I agree with you. The ramps did not make the cut, obviously. But we either have an issue there or we don't. And Mr. Foster brought up about the turn and radius and so forth on that ramp. So I don't know if we're going to address that at another point in time, regardless of CPC, but it sounds like it's something that's an issue currently for us in town.
Any other discussion on the preservation or restoration of storehouse?
Only what everybody's already said, I repeat it.
Okay. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
And now down to Article 21 on the walking trail and exercise station.
I move we approve Article 21 for the walking trail at Greenwood Center.
Second.
Discussion or questions?
Yeah, I do have not so much questions on it. I have, we've not received anything on this for a perspective of, I think we asked about the genesis of it, and it was brought forward by a citizen's petition, or a petition to you?
That's correct, FALOCA.
Yeah, was there any research put into this on whether this was a need, that you had documented evidence of a survey of the seniors, or the type of facility to be put in, or who was the designer on this? I mean, what is the background of it? I think that's what we had the question before when we asked, and I still have the same question.
Well, Ms. Grady and Ms. Nato were the ones who submitted the application. Perhaps they can speak to it directly, because it was a pretty detailed, from our point of view, it was a very detailed, very precise application.
Okay, so this should be pretty easy to talk about then.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
What would you like to know?
Come on up.
Come on up, man.
Come up to the microphones. Step right up. Let's go. Let's have some fun. Well, let's wait for Diane. She's going to take her time.
Kathy Grady, I do programming at the Adult Center.
And I'm Diane Nato. I'm president of FALOCA, the applicant. Oh, well, they know.
Yeah, I guess what we had asked, Diane, was, we saw the blueprint and it showed the trail.
Yes.
And the question that came up when we started asking, why was that design in? Was that a design that the seniors wanted, or what was the genesis of what was taking place?
Who did you ask?
We were asking when we were briefed on this project.
Oh.
And
Who
there was
briefed
only,
you?
the community preservation people.
Oh.
And there was no one else there that evening.
Huh. Well, they had a full, I don't know, we had a huge application, and it showed, because there are a lot of walking programs that seniors participate in, but the main reason, if I recall, is that our sidewalks in our town are in such poor condition that we wanted to offer them a wonderful area that's safe and secure to do their walking, and also have exercise equipment, because it's good for seniors, and it's good for everybody. It helps the whole community as well, because it just doesn't say seniors only.
Walking is the simplest exercise. We have seniors who go to the Big Y and use a cart to walk around. Big Y, go down to Enfield Mall. So this provides a walking opportunity for people who might actually not otherwise walk, because it's going to be, I worked with Mike Rabel and Yem down at the DPW in the design of it, and to talk about how the equipment would be in, so it'd be safe, it'd be cemented into the ground, because it's really, there's a walking trail, and it's going to be asphalt, so it's going to be smooth, not like crushed stone or anything. Smooth walking trail, so you can walk, and it's going to be wide, so you can walk together. You can also use a walker or a wheelchair or anything, because it's going to be wide and smooth. Emily was very, the director said, I want to be able to see people. So actually, the drawing may be a little off, because it might be a little closer in, so that they're visible from the center in case anything happened.
Well, how long is that, do you know?
No, I don't. It's not, we're trying to figure it out. I think it's about 3/4 of a mile, or half, 3/4, somewhere in there. But it's a loop, so you can go around.
Well,
the other thing is, Greenwood Park is very underutilized in general. So this isn't just a walking trail, it's also to provide an area, not just for exercise, but we're gonna have picnic tables, which are ADA compliant, so you can pull a wheelchair up to it. It's gonna have, the bocce courts are being refurbished. It's gonna have shuffleboard. The idea is to get seniors outdoors, who wouldn't ordinarily be outdoors exercising or whatever. But also families can come on Sunday, Greenwood Park isn't locked, and use this area at any time. It's going to be great.
Oh, I have no doubt it'll be great.
Florida.
Be like
A
Florida.
little bit of Florida right here in Long Meadow.
The villages.
I guess there's an obvious follow-up. What are you going to do in the winter?
And the
Pray
winter.
for no snow.
You can.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, Emily's in charge of winter.
Emily Perkins, director. Oh, sorry.
Emily's got a plan.
As you guys know, I started a ski group this year. I've already been asked to do a snowshoe group, and we can do it right outside the door. They also want cross-country skiing. It's also a big enough park for that.
Thank you.
Okay, and I have.
This park is a great boon to the center, which has not been fully utilized, and we plan to do that. We love this park.
And it really would have been great to have you guys in the night when these projects were being talked about.
Well, we went to two of those meetings.
We went to
and
all their meetings.
We went
Oh,
to,
okay.
no one told us we had to show up for yours.
Or
And you never know which person up there is going to ask strange questions.
You know, well.
Okay, I have one more follow-up.
Sure.
Mike, I understand you're incapacitated. Was there an impact on maintenance dollars here? Is there a future need?
Again, if you put asphalt down, it's going to have to be maintained in the future. So
Right.
some of what is going to be there is utilizing existing asphalt. A good part of it is new. So, yeah, there will be.
Is it a root infested area out through there, or have you got pretty good areas to put your asphalt in?
There's not, it's not root infested, but there are trees, especially along the backside, along the Nevin Street side. From a fence that goes out toward, a sidewalk that goes out towards Nevins, will be going across the back of the hardball field, if you can imagine it, over by the Molly McAvoy playground, and then continuing over some existing asphalt.
Okay, so you've analyzed the site, and you don't think there'll be a negative impact, and you put the trail in, and you'll get a useful life out of it without having root damage, which is trip hazards for our seniors?
I would hope that we would get 15 years without root damage. When we excavate and put in the base.
You're gonna root prune and everything else at that time, and?
At the time, yes.
And
Okay.
Mike advised me on all the equipment, that we can leaf blow under this one, you know,
Okay.
and it was chosen on that basis of maintenance, good maintenance.
Mark?
Easy maintenance.
Yeah, I guess, just a question because of the concern that, you know, asphalt looks good the first couple of years and then things happen. Why?
We have some of that.
Yeah, why we didn't go with something like a wood chip kind of, you know, was that at least considered and then rejected, that it's softer for people to walk?
Wood chips are also a fire hazard in drought season.
Well,
And
a
fall
severe
hazard.
one.
They're a fall
Okay,
hazard
okay.
for seniors.
So
we
fine,
wanted it as
that's-
smooth as possible.
Okay.
I mean, people who are steady on their feet can walk anywhere, even in cracked sidewalks, so we really wanted it smooth and.
Any other?
I have one question, Mike, and it ricochets back to you when I was thought. I happened to watch your leaf crews down there last year, and they have a pretty large truck around there. Is this all gonna be built to take truck traffic? That you can have your truck go across it without damaging it?
It's a 4-inch sidewalk, so, actually, it's asphalt, so it's a 3-inch sidewalk. So it is not constructed it's not constructed to be a roadway.
Oh, I understand it's not, but I'm.
Truck may have to pass it from time to time,
Right.
and it's gonna be occasional.
Yeah, because I know you shared with me too that that's some pretty, the soils are, what the hell is the term that they hold the water there?
Flowable fill.
No, not flowable fill, but anyway, you got a high water table down in that area. Are you putting this in an area where it's fairly stable? Because you are gonna have trucks go across it, we know that.
Most of it is very stable property.
Okay.
The wet areas,
Hydrate
there is
soils.
already an existing sidewalk over that.
Okay, I was trying to remember hydrate soils. So, okay, so no concerns and everything will be great. 15 years from now, we'll go down and walk it and it'll just be starting to fail.
15 years from now, we'll need it.
I need it now. Thank you.
All right. So, Alex?
Well, somebody asked the question of how long this is. I actually looked at this distance this fall because I was helping to plan a cross-country race for kids, and it's about a third of a mile. And one of the reasons why I'm supportive of it is I think it's something that, as the proponents say, it's not just for seniors. I could see this pathway being used for youth races.
Yes.
And, you know, and it's also in an area where kids are playing. And, you know, and I do think that it's probably even a better place to go walking than the track, because it's a little bit more scenic. So I think this is a good project.
Also, the playground is down there, and one of the ideas is to put adult ellipticals over there so that parents and grandparents, while their children playing, get a little exercise in and
Good.
make it useful to the whole community.
Great. All right, let's vote. All those in favor? Thank you.
I make a motion to approve Article 22 for the Community Preservation Project for the Community House Fund. Coming from,
22.
Genesis House.
Genesis.
Genesis House.
The generator.
oh, from the Community Housing Fund, I'm sorry, for the generator at Genesis House.
Second.
Any discussion?
Again, I guess I would echo again, as I was going over these projects this weekend, not just the ones that are up for a vote today, but for the ones that were rejected. Again, I have a little bit of trouble with this as a priority over the ADA walkways at the library. I do see the value of it, but, and again, I'm going to support it with that, even though I do have that reservation, because, you know, I want to do defer to the work that's been done by the CPA committee.
All right, any other questions or
Yeah.
comments?
Yeah, I had comments. This was a very well put together package when I reviewed it. The paperwork that this firm put in was very well prepared.
I think that's a tribute to Chris Carr, Chris Carr and his son, who put the application together, and the law firm, I think it was up here.
Yeah, I mean, that's the type of package that you would hope to see on everything. It was a very well put together. You might pass that on to those folks. They did a great job on the package.
I have.
Okay, and I share Alex's concern and Mr. Gold's concern and everybody else's concern on the ADA issues at the library, but we'll bring that up under a different venue. But, no, this was a very nice package.
Thank you.
Any other comments on this article? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. I'd like to move down to Article 25, which is the study, the $35,000 for the study on the, for the Council of Aging.
I make a motion to approve Article 25 as written.
Is there a second?
Yeah, second.
All right, a discussion? Mark?
Yeah, I guess I'd like to know the origin of this request and what we intend to get out of this. I mean, and this is not a CPA funds, this is.
It's a citizen petition.
Citizens petition.
Article 25 is a citizen's petition?
Yes.
It doesn't say it. It
That's
says
what it
26 is a citizen's petition.
I believe it was also a citizen's, would you
If
like to
25 is a
speak to it?
citizen's petition, it's a citizen's petition.
$35,000 for the study?
Yeah?
That is a citizen's
Then
petition.
we have no vote. It's on the warrant. I don't know why we're voting on it.
Okay, you're right.
Because it doesn't say
It
citizen.
did-
It doesn't say
It should
citizen's
say, I'm
petition.
sorry, it should say citizens petition there.
Yeah.
Emily?
Eleanor did ask at the beginning that it not be a citizen position, petition, thank you, and that it be moved up simply because it was the COA board putting it in.
Oh, that's right. She did request that it would be considered a COA
Right,
rather than
that would be-
a citizen's petition. And I know you had said something to that effect, Mark. How does the board feel about it not being the board to accept this and approve and set it?
You mean, we can't change the status of this.
Well, you could put it on the warrant on your own motion.
Well, then we'd be under discussion. I'll make up our mind. We're going to discuss it or not.
Well, okay, well, we put the motion on the floor. It was seconded.
Actually, I'll retract my motion because I cannot make a motion to accept it because
Right.
I thought it was not a citizen petition.
Right.
So I'm going to take that back, retract my motion because I thought it didn't say citizen petition on it.
Yeah, I know there's no motion on the floor, but I think that there's just a lot of issues revolving around this, far too more for me to want to start getting into our discussion of whether we want this on the ballot. I mean, after we went up on the town meeting warrant, I mean, if it's on there as a citizen petition, you know, that's great, but if we were going to do this, the question is, where would that select board endorsed expenditure of $35,000 fit with all the other select board endorsed, you know, expenditures? And you know, and I just think it's a tough call to say that we're going after $35,000 to study options providing, the way this is worded, truly suitable space and facilities for the Long Meadow Council on Aging Center. And it implies there aren't truly suitable space that we're in.
Marie, can I ask a question? I know under the statute that's at the beginning of my packet, the Community Preservation Act Committee submits things to the legislative body for approval, and it's through the select board that happens, which means the town meeting. I don't think, we're in the process of going through the Council on Aging Board of Directors bylaws. I don't think there's a similar provision that provides for that transmission of things. And I guess I would ask Dave if my understanding of that is incorrect or not, but it was, like I said, it was intended to be a citizen petition.
Well, were you presented with a petition signed by the required number of signatures to put this on an annual town meeting warrant? That's the question.
Yes, we were.
Yeah.
So, and there doesn't seem to be a will to make it any change, so we're just going to keep it as a citizen's petition.
Yeah.
Actually, I think if it comes in as a citizen petition and it meets all the requirements, you have to take it.
No, I think that in the past, we have sometimes endorsed citizens petitions only once, I think.
Oh, well, you
Yeah.
can take whatever position you want, and you can move it around on the warrant.
We can even move it around. So when we finish with the other articles, we'll talk about order and where we might put the citizens petition. And the last one, the 26, is also a citizens petition on fluoride. So now we will go back and start looking at the bylaw articles that we skipped. And the first one is Article 9 in regards to the registration and maintenance of foreclosed properties. Let's start with a motion on the floor, and then we'll have discussion. Is there a motion to approve the registration and maintenance of foreclosed property bylaw?
I'll move we approve Article 9.
Second.
All right, any discussion?
Can I just do a brief intro? Like, you can go ahead.
Okay.
This is something that has been talked about for a while. Our building commissioner, Paul Healy, gets many complaints about properties that appear to be abandoned and may be in foreclosure, grasses being cut, possible threat to security, vermin, things like that. And he spends an exceptional amount of time chasing people down in parts unknown through holding companies and things like that. Many other communities have adopted these types of registries. In fact, when banks do begin initiating foreclosure proceedings in the town, they often call Paul Healy's office and say, do you have a registry? Because so many other communities do. It's just a way of making sure that we know when a property is in foreclosure, that we have a local point of contact for the maintenance of that property, that there are fines in place to assess in case those things aren't being done, and that the fines then are placed on a lien, or the fines, if they are unpaid after a certain amount of time, become a lien on the property, so people can't walk away from the fines either. So I think this is a good ordinance that captures that'll give Paul Healy the tools he needs to effectively enforce the properties that govern the care and condition of property in town. Excuse me, our bylaws that govern the care and custody of properties in town.
Any questions?
Yeah.
Mark?
How does this differ from the proposal that was defeated, I believe, at an earlier?
No, it was never put on.
Oh,
I withdrew it.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
I think it looks much more extensive than the initial one that had been written.
Can I ask a question?
Paul?
In definitions, it talks about vacant. In the vacant, it's under definitions of 5-902. You talk about vacant of meaning any 60 days of unoccupied. Does the vacant also go with the meaning of foreclosure? Meaning, someone's on vacation in Florida for 3 months or 4 months, or they're traveling, they're relocated, but still have a property. If they're out of town for 6 months on a work sabbatical somewhere, does that constitute vacant, even though it's not foreclosed? I just like to...
At Paul Healy's request, the focus of the bylaw is on foreclosed properties. The term vacant comes up if you look at subsection 5-904 sub 4, which starts at the bottom of page 3 of your warrant and carries over to the next page. So it says property that is vacant must be safe, it must be secured from exposure to the elements, so it's not to be accessible to unauthorized persons. So I believe that's the only instance where the word vacant.
No, I understand that, but I'm saying it only, in this bylaw, because foreclosure comes on before that, the vacant only applies to foreclosure, it cannot apply to someone who's on vacation for 3 months in Europe.
I would say under the bylaw, it could be vacant independently of having been foreclosed on.
Paul, if you read 5-902 at the very end of that definition, it does address that issue. It says, does not include property that is temporarily vacant due to seasonal absences.
And the action that is proposed under the draft bylaw is only triggered by a foreclosure.
Any other questions? Alex?
Am I correct in perceiving that this is the first time we've seen this?
Yes.
Well, I don't know what business we have in voting for a two-page, single-space, small type revision to our bylaws when it was handed to us when we walked in here. It would be malpractice as select board members to do that. I have no time to digest this. If this is important and it needs to be on the warrant, then we ought to approve it tomorrow. I think we've got a meeting, and I'm happy to spend the time necessary to study this, but the idea that we'd be approving this like this, it seems a very bad idea.
So is there a consensus on the board to table the motion tonight until tomorrow? Mark?
I certainly support Mr. Grant's comments.
Okay.
Same here.
So do we need to withdraw the motion or just vote
Fine,
to
I'll withdraw
table?
the motion, make it a lot easier.
Okay. So let's move on to the next one, which is, I tried to circle it. I believe it's Article 23.
Yeah, we have
I have
Article
the
10 in
Article
front of
10.
us.
Let's see, Article 10, regarding absences from meetings. Is there a motion to approve Article 10?
Hearing no motion, I'd like to ask a question. Where did this, what's the origin of this request? Again, I haven't seen this one before either.
Yeah.
And this has come up many, many times in the
Right.
past with people who have literally gone away for the summer and not attended multiple meetings and.
The origin of the request, Mark, is actually from the Community Preservation Act. The CPC, I believe, has a member that has been absent and has not responded to entreaties to attend meetings or responded to communication. So a request was made to, have that person removed as a member, so a participating member could then be appointed. And when we looked in, when Attorney Martell, at my request of the opinion, looked at the bylaws, we don't have a provision under our bylaws that allows for a removal of an absent member, but I think many towns do have bylaws that have such a provision, so.
I mean, this was actually taken, the town of Ludlow, which I also represent, has a bylaw like this. I mean, the idea is that if a person isn't showing up and isn't participating, there ought to be a way to create a vacancy without having to wait for that person's term to expire and put somebody to what.
Can I imply that the word that may have his name certified by the time means that there's some flexibility for
Yes.
an illness or a?
Yes.
Okay.
Where does it say
So,
in here?
Well, it says that any member of a board or commission who fails to attend 3 consecutive meetings called by the committee may have his name certified by the remaining members of the committee.
Can you explain what that means? Because that is, so, he may have his name, that person could have their name certified. Can you please explain what that means?
But the word I mean,
No,
the
what it
way I
means,
see this playing out, person has missed 5 meetings in a row, and the remaining members of the committee want someone productive there. They could vote to turn the name, this person's name into the town clerk, who then would give notice back to the committee that there's a vacancy there, and then you would follow the, to the appointing authority, say you, and then you would go through the process of filling the vacancy under that procedure that's set out in the bylaw.
So where do you come up with that? You read into it that you see as something can be set aside for illness?
Well, it says because theoretically, because it's may, the board may decide not to. If it says they may not.
That's not theoretical. It just says they can do it. So we have, and there's two points of this. One is, we've never heard from the Community Preservation Committee that we've had issues with membership on there, because we're the appointing authority, other than by statute from, by the number of people they have to have appointed from certain committees. So it would be good to have know that information of who's not attending meetings, but that's up to them to report it to the board. But I think this is not something I would support, because
someone could go away for, let me put it this way, we had 4 meetings last week. I worked 3 of those nights. I came in after work. If I missed 3 of those meetings, 4 members of this board could have put my name into certified, which I'm sure they'd be happy to do, to remove me from the committee. But my point is, that's all it would have taken, 3 meetings and meetings that were not scheduled on the regular.
You're elected. This wouldn't apply to you.
But
Same
but
thing.
the
If I-
CPA could have scheduled 3 meetings in
Oh,
consecutive
okay.
days.
Yeah.
Well, I think
I think that's your point.
That's my point.
I think that it's unfair to say CPC because this has actually come up on many different committees throughout the years, and it is an issue that if someone, and it's not a matter of just 3 meetings, someone could just disappear for a whole year and they don't respond. There's no process that we have right now in order to bring that forward to the board. Richard?
Yeah, all the discussion's 100% valid, but even if we remain to keep this thing, I think we could remove the his name and make it so it can
Okay,
be
that was
male or female.
That was my fault.
Okay.
That's not typically my
It'll
style.
be so recorded.
Attorney Martell, why doesn't it go back to the appointing authority as opposed to the committee? Again, I could conceive of having somebody on a committee that's people just want to get rid of. They find out they're on vacation next week, schedule 4 meetings, and then put their name forward. And it doesn't say that the appointing, now, I guess the appointing committee can reappoint that person, but, since the appointing committee appoints them, shouldn't the appointing committee be the ones who remove them?
Well, the appointing authority, yeah, you could have it that way if you wanted, but the way this one is set up,
Right.
the
I'm just
remaining members vote to, essentially declare that there's a vacancy. They give notice to the clerk. Clerk gives notice back to the offending member and the appointing authority that there's a vacancy, and then you go through the process for filling a vacancy.
I just comment
I
that
don't think there's anything
I know that
magic
we've had a
about it.
long-standing issue, without naming names, that we're a committee of somebody who literally goes away for the summer. And from, pick a date, June 1st till, August 31st, they're out of town and they miss multiple meetings during the summer, and that's been very problematic for that committee. And I can understand that, but I would think it would come back to the appointing authority as opposed to letting the committee take, kind of.
You mean who should decide whether that person should be removed or not?
Correct. That was my.
Is there an amendment you would like to have where the issue is brought to the appointing authority?
I have no idea how I would word this.
You could say something like the board, if it misses 3 consecutive meetings, the remaining members shall present the name to the town clerk. The town clerk shall transmit that to the appointing authority for a hearing on the matter and take action from there, or something like
Or a
that.
decision?
You'd have to write that.
Yeah.
So,
I'm
do
not
you want
sure.
to
Well, I'm not sure.
review that tomorrow as see an
I would like
alternate
to
solution?
ask our town council if he if he could write something, if other people feel the way I do, and that's the first if he could write something that returns the authority back to the appointing authority as opposed to.
But you'd have to have, the person, if you're concerned that someone's going to be cashiered because they missed 3 meetings during the summer, and you want to have it, and you want to make that call on whether the person should be removed, you're going to have some hearing mechanism where the person who's missed the meetings gets a chance to tell you why I shouldn't be removed. Some fairly rudimentary due process was, and I can scratch something out. When are you meeting tomorrow?
7 o'clock?
Same time,
At
same
night?
place.
Oh,
Every-
great, all right.
every night.
I'll get you something tomorrow during the day.
That's all we do.
Okay, do you want to
Do we have
withdraw
a
the
motion
motion?
right now?
Yeah.
What?
Did we get a motion?
No.
No.
No, okay, so we will
I just,
table that till
if I
tomorrow.
can just say something, I think if this board entertains this type of motion, you're going down a very slippery slope. And by that I mean, the first time one of us misses 3 meetings in a row, just like we have a bylaw that says your lawn can't be more than 6 inches, and we find town property that could have, we better maintain our own lawn, first of all, I will disagree with the statement that this has happened on numerous times with numerous committees. Anecdotal. give me the facts of, give me letters from committee members, from committee chairs that say, I have a hard time staffing my meetings. That should be the first thing that comes back to this board, so that when we do our annual appointments, we just went through a series of appointment after appointment after appointment. And Mr. Gold, I think, is the one person that asked that, the famous question of, are you going to have time to, they have a heavy meeting schedule here and there and so forth. And again, I'm saying to you is that I think this is silly. If there's an issue, the chairs should communicate with the select board that we're having an issue with this member. And then when it comes time for reappointment, okay, I think that you're going down a very slippery slope, because the first time any one of you misses 3 meetings, it's a great example for the rest of the community, that it's okay for board members to miss 3 consecutive meetings. And folks, you're going to start dealing with people who might have a health issue, and you really want them to come before the board and talk about something they're being treated for and something like that. Because what this it says is the committee may, which now means you've left it up to every committee to decide how are they going to handle someone who misses 3 appointments.
What?
Will you then, excuse me, I'm talking. Will
But
you
there's
then
no
have someone
motion.
you will then have someone who misses 6 meetings and isn't asked to resign from the committee?
That we can have lots of variations on it. Let's wait until we get something solid in front of us. We'll tomorrow review the bylaw, if you can come up with
I
something.
mean, in fairness, could I get some sense from, is the group interested in a revised bylaw along the lines of what has been suggested before I go ahead and do that?
Yeah, I think the 2 concerns you're seeing is the idea of 3 consecutive meetings rather
Okay.
than a period of time. And the other concern was that it does not go back to the appointing authority. So
Okay.
if you could address those 2
So
issues.
is there some other number of meetings that the group would be more comfortable with?
Maria, I think Attorney Martell's question is still a valid question. From where I'm sitting, Paul's not going to support this, likely not to support this. I want some change, but I haven't heard from the 3 people to my left here of whether they even think we ought to go down this road.
Yeah, I'm not that supportive of the issue either, for many of the reasons that Paul mentioned. Personally, I don't have a lot of support for it.
I would concur with Richard's comments. I guess,
So it looks like I'm off the hook.
You're off the hook. I mean, my concern is, this is sort of what we've talked about, wanting to review bylaws, see where the charter issue needs to be taken care of by bylaws, and this, I felt, was a simple problem that has been sitting out there for a long time, but if there's no will with the board, it won't pass tomorrow with the extra work.
Marie, the one issue that is very severe with was our Board of Assessors, and I'm going to call them
Yeah.
out by name, because they have a statutory requirement to act on abatement requests. And several years ago, we went through a situation where they could not get a quorum, and people's abatements could not be heard, or abatement of applications could not be heard. And according to state law, if your abatement application isn't heard in, I think it's 60 days, the quote was, you're deemed denied, and people are getting denied without a chance to go before our Board of Assessors. And it was a problem, but we handled it. We handled it in a different manner. It took us a cycle of a year to do it. But that, to me, is far worse than, unless other boards cannot get a quorum. But if you've got a committee of 7 and even 2 people don't show up, I haven't heard they can't get a quorum.
Yeah, well, we also have an instance where the demolition committee, which is going to come up, that people actually moved out of town. And until,
When they move out of town, they're no longer on the committee. I mean, that
well,
seems to me.
I think that there's ways we could have tightened it up, but we're not going to waste the time tonight going through it, so we don't need to move on with that. Is there Article 23 on and that's the Building Demolition Committee, right now is set up where there are no terms, someone's on it for life. And so we wanted to put that in line with the other committees in town and have actual terms. So is there a motion?
I'll move to approve Article 23, set terms for the Building Demolition Committee.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
I actually like to see a warrant article or motion that removes the Building Demolition Committee. In the time it was founded, they have had no need to meet. This was done on an emotional basis, and I don't know what this would do to help the town going forward, other than to infringe on people's property rights.
Alex?
How many members, does anybody know how many members there are on there now? Is it 6?
Let me just tell you that the when the present version of the bylaw has no number. I don't know, was it decided how many would go on there? I don't know. I mean, it's
Okay, so this
it's
is the first time we're setting a number.
Correct, and it was because of, somehow or other, the action that was taken that night didn't get totally carried over into the bylaw. So, anything you do now is gonna be more than what you have.
My understanding is that the demolition building committees throughout the Commonwealth are part of the Historic Commission. This town, someone came forward during town meeting and put forth a bylaw saying that it should not be part of the Historic Commission, it should be an independent group of residents. And so, but it was never, as our attorney said, completely put in the framework of the other bylaws.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Martell? Dave, the bylaw specifically prohibits someone from tearing down their house within a year. That was what was proposed at town meeting. There's a one-year delay, so the Building Demolition Committee can establish or investigate the effects on the town and community and so forth. Does that hold true if it was under the Historic District Commission? Does the building committee have the same power granted to it in the bylaw? That's my question. Marie said, and typically in towns, the demolition committee is under the auspices of the Historic District Commission. The building, and my question to you is, the bylaw gave specific powers to the Building Demolition Committee that can withhold demolition of a home for up to a year while they review the impact on the community.
Yes.
And it was for homes more than 100 years old. My question is, if it was part of the Historic District Commission, as it is in other communities,
If
as
it
I was
was
just saying.
in the historic, if the house was in the historic district?
That's not what the building committee said. The Building Demolition Committee.
No,
is-
I want to make sure I understand your question.
I'm asking, no, Marie just said that typically building demolition, just tell me if I got that wrong. You just said typically they're under the auspices of the Historic District Commission?
Let me correct one thing, though.
Okay.
I don't believe it's 1 year. My understanding, and we need to check, is that traditionally, it's kept within the Historic District Committee. It's just it's a subcommittee of it. And I believe it's like 30 or 60 days. It's not a year. Do you know what the
original
full
If you
bylaw
look
is?
at, I think it's section 5 oh, you don't have your bylaw.
No.
The Historical Commission, there's two different, there's the Historical Commission and the Historic District Commission.
Mhm.
In this case, it's the Historical Commission determines that the structure is a significant structure and that the proposed demolition would be detrimental to the town, then it shall file written notice with its findings of its determination and the building commissioner, and no demolition permit shall be issued until 9 months after the date of the determination. And I gather that that is there to allow somebody to go to court and seek to have the demolition tied up.
So, just to follow up, then that's what I'm saying, this demolition bylaw, which established a demolition committee,
Yes.
replaces that through the Historic Commission.
Well, no, what I read you was from the demolition
Okay.
bylaw, as it was adopted, I think, in
All
2006.
right, I'm sorry, I misspoke. It's not a year, it's 9 months.
Right.
Okay.
Well, don't forget, it's 9 months after the hearing, so I mean, I don't know how long, the
So
hearing.
my question is if there was a bylaw change to remove the demolition committee, would the Historic Commission or Historic District Commission still have that same power? Is that something granted through the Commonwealth?
I'd say no.
Okay.
But if a building is in the historic district,
Correct.
I think there are certain limits on what can be
differences.
done.
Yeah.
But not every historical building, not every building that was built before 1901 is in the historic district.
Correct. Right.
This bylaw, this article does not, if you want to do another article getting rid of it, it's fine. This is just trying to limit and for us to really have control over understanding who is on, when they're on, and when they're meeting, because right now we have no idea what this group is
I
doing.
mean, if
So
you're
it's
going to stay
tighten
with
it up.
the bylaw,
Mhm.
this amendment makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
If you have conceptual issues with the bylaw, then that would be the subject of another article.
I just think the inaction of the committee proves that the bylaw is unnecessary. I think they just answered their own question.
Any other question on Article 23?
I would move to amend article. Do we have a motion?
Yep. it's
Okay.
been made.
So my motion would amend Article 23 as proposed to change it from 6 members to 5. And that the number who are appointed by the select board therefore be changed to 3.
Okay.
Just so we have an odd number. And again, you know, if they do nothing, then it doesn't matter, but if they are called upon to do something, it would be useful to not have 3-3 ties.
Do you have is that a motion?
It is.
Is there a second? Okay,
Second.
any discussion on the motion? The amendment? All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, how about on the actual article, motion on the article? Any more discussion?
Can I
All
just-
those?
Sorry,
Yes.
just make a comment, just because I think this one and the one on the absences, just to clarify how these ended up here, I think this is something that the chair and I have talked about, but also really almost administrative cleanup of the bylaws, recognizing some gaps. I think it's important that, like in this case, that, you know, Paul, I think I agree with you to some extent. It can seem like if something did come up with the demolition committee, how are they accountable? And if their terms never end, which under our current bylaws they technically would not, then there's no way to be accountable. And I guess the thought I had on the previous one was, I hear what you're saying, you don't want disagreements over policy matters to lead to somebody to go away for the summer and then get kicked off the board, but at the same time, you don't want to send the message that you can blow up as many meetings as you want and still remain a member of a committee. So I just want to give a little background on how these ended up in the warrant, really.
Okay.
Sorry, just want to clarify that.
All those in favor of Article 23? All those opposed? Okay.
And just an editorial, Deb, in the paragraph 2, where it says 2 members, it should be for a term instead of an term.
Okay. And Article 24, does everyone feel comfortable discussing that now? I know they had received this before today, but it is very extensive. Do you want to have another night, or are you ready to discuss the marijuana?
I mean, keep in mind that the way the amendments to the zoning act go, they go through you as purely a ministerial act into the planning board. And I understand that the planning board is going to have its public hearing on April 2nd.
Oh, okay.
And they will then, that will be the basis for their report to the town meeting.
So there could definitely be
when the zoning
changes.
amendment would be voted on.
Okay.
Can I ask a question, Dave? Dave, under the statute or law from the state, this is not something we can disagree with it, but it still has to go to town meeting and be adopted, correct?
Well, I mean, the risk is, our moratorium runs out at the end of June. We're given a moratorium on zoning bylaws that deal with the marijuana dispensaries. If we don't do something by June 30th, then that's unregulated, and it's legal, and I believe that someone could grow marijuana as an agricultural use, which is outside the realm of zoning control under general laws, and so that would be a concern. I think arguably the sale of these marijuana products could be treated as a business and do it in the business zone. So if you really want to allow it our way, you do it through a zoning bylaw amendment. And I understand that this one is primarily based on the template from the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission.
Okay, is there a motion to approve Article 24?
Make a motion to approve Article 24 as written.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I have a quick discussion. Dave, can I presume that based on the hearing that may turn things up or review by the planning board, that if things change, they would propose an amendment to this on the town meeting floor?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
I'm sorry, if things were, what do you mean by that?
In other words, if they were identified through their hearing that it needed to be changed from the way it's currently written, they could propose or would propose.
Right.
Based on input, at their hearing, that's what the point of the hearing is.
And, I mean, this is something that I have studied, and this was actually discussed at the MMA meeting. One of the breakout sessions talked about it, and I think it's a good bylaw. I think it appropriately confines this type of facility. I think it's, and it certainly avoids the sort of worst-case scenario, which Attorney Martell talks about.
All right. So all those in favor? Opposed? Okay. So I believe we've finished the warrant, and we're ready to move over to, my recommendation is we move to capital projects now while we have Mike Rabel very patiently waiting. I gave everyone the spreadsheet. I thought it might be easier. I know we have so many spreadsheets, we have so many lists, and I thought this might be an easy way to go through it. And the very first one is a CPC project. The first non-CPC project on this list is the replacement of the 2 boilers. The way I was going to go about it, I wanted to see how the board felt about it. I thought we would have discussion, and if we approve a capital project, we vote to put it on the list, and...
Because that would be a separate warrant article.
Well,
correct?
the way I understand is the capital planning articles are all together. It depends on how they're funded. So there could be multiple articles
Okay.
for capital funding. So the first...
Alex, in the past, we've had it a couple of different ways, but the most recent way, and Mr. Pasterzik will, correct me if I'm wrong, that all those things funded from our capital stabilization fund would be in one warrant article.
Yeah.
Everything funded from a specific stabilization fund, like a water stabilization
Right.
fund, would be in another article, or the sewer stabilization fund would be a third, or in case the ambulance would be still a fourth. But we don't need to have a separate warrant article for, like, each vehicle if they're all coming from the...
Right. Okay.
So the first capital planning project that was approved by the committee, as well as the town manager recommends, is the replacement of the 2 school boilers, I believe, in Williams School. Is there a motion to approve the 2 boilers? So we can start discussion.
I'll move we approve the 2 boiler replacements at Williams Middle School.
Second.
Okay, and discussion. Do we have any questions on the projects?
I have a
Alex?
general question, and forgive me if this is a stupid one, but it was, in going back over these materials, it was not at least obvious to me exactly how these different things were going to be funded, because obviously they go up over $1.1 million. The only 2 bond items that I see are the DPW facility and the Quint truck. Again, I'm sure there's a very logical explanation, but and I went back to the town manager's report, sort of general presentation. I think you said it was achievable, and it just wasn't 100% clear to me exactly where the money was coming from for each of these projects, putting aside the CPA projects.
Well, that's what I thought we would start with. If the total doesn't pass through this board, we're not going to have to worry if there's not an overage. Then I believe what the town manager had been talked about was the extra levy limit, maybe looking to bond more than we usually do. But right now, if we're not going to approve the projects, I thought we would deal with that at the end of the
Okay,
list.
so you want to go through and approve or not approve, and then decide how to pay for it?
But what if we approve more than $1.1 million? Or I guess the number's, 1.25 or something like that, because of what's still in the capital stabilization fund. But what if we approve more than that? Then we go back and say, well, we
Then we
take
gotta-
things off?
We either have to take things off or decide if we're going to be bonding something extra.
This is, I'll express my concerns, that this is a very odd way to go around it. Normally, you would have a program brought in with your financing package there. You wouldn't have this massive amount that you're going to approve or disapprove and then try to find funding at the end.
But that's what this board said back in the fall when we said, are we going to keep it at 2%, or are we going to increase it? And this board made it very clear, they want to say, we want to see what the projects are, and then we're going to decide
Okay,
how
but
much
you're
we're going to
asking us to
fund.
vote on each individual project, and just like Mark and everybody's voiced concern is that we can end up at the end of the road where we voted $500,000 over our budget, now we're looking for money, so I don't know how you're gonna get around that dilemma.
Or we cut back on projects and we go back to it.
And which ones do you cut back on then?
Well, that's what this board would have to make the decision on, because either that or what our directive was to the town manager is we did not want to limit what was going on the capital plan.
I think the direction that I intended to be out there was to give us a holistic list that was priority-driven and could be backed up, not necessarily to go for carte blanche and program 500,000 over program. It was to give us the highest priority need, because we've consistently asked questions in here and been informed again that, well, if I had the money, this would be higher priority. And that was the main complaint that we had, was what is priority at this town? Not a wash basket full of projects that we can try to emotionally attach ourselves, is what is the most highest priority project? And there should be a very concise list of what's the highest priority projects. And they should run down in the order of our budget allocation. Then it stops and says, okay, for your further consideration, here's your bond considerations if you want to go further. But these were the number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And we have not done that.
Rich, you specifically gave me when the director was debated, you specifically said you shouldn't limit the number of projects by the funding amount available.
Exactly.
So the review of the projects was, what projects do we recommend as priorities? Generally, the suite of projects as priorities for this year. What projects in the many others that were requested are not as critical for this year and can be done later in the 5-year plan? That's what the board asked for, and that's what we have in front of us.
Apparently, when I communicated, we did agree on half of it, because I did say exactly what you said. We should not be limited by dollars, but that does not mean that we shouldn't have the number 1 priority project of the whole town is number 1. And number 2, equally agreed, number 2 is the highest priority project. And we go on down that list, and we now have got a laundry list of a lot of needs, and I don't know what the highest priority need of the town is of all of these projects. And I think that's what I was after, Stephen, was you and Mike and Paul and whoever gets together and says, this is the number 1.
I thought that was the capital planning committee's role, was to prioritize the projects, to be honest with you.
It's a process of everyone. It's a process of the Director of Public Works, the engineering, the town manager, that come before us and say, this is the number 1 project. Do we know what the number 1 project is in this town this year? The number 1.
Marie, can
Well,
can I ask?
let's talk about process too.
Well, that's what I'm talking. I mean, this isn't even contentious. I'm just seeing on your sheet, and I noticed this from the other materials, that CPC recommends $2.5 million, and then in parentheses is 1.1 million equals 2%. Again, this may be so obvious, it's a stupid question, but I still, to me, what I'm reading is that we're being asked to vote on $2.5 million, and we've got $1.1 million coming out of our annual budget. And my just basic question is, and I'm sure there's a good answer for it, where that other $1.4 million is coming from.
Paul?
If you wanted to complete the whole projects, you know, the 2.5 million, we take the 1.1 out of our current allotment,
Right.
we'd have to bond, a certain number of these are bondable, and we would have to bond those, you know, as an example, the pavement preservation, $500,000. That is a bondable item.
Okay.
Sidewalks, you know, a lot of the, well, actually, all of the drainage. So we could probably work it in that fashion to find which ones are bondable and which ones that we'd have to come up with the cash on.
Okay, so if we did all 2.5, we would have to bond 1.4.
Correct.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know.
Well, as we said when we presented sometime last week, there's $153,000 in levy capacity that we were recommending possibly for a bond issuance, which would get you in the neighborhood of 1.2 million. And then we are projecting $1 million or so in free cash for fiscal year 15 from this leftover from fiscal year 2014. And then, as we did in the fall, allocate some of that free cash for some of these other projects that aren't as time sensitive. That's the way we went through it and thought you could get there by following that strategy from a financial standpoint.
And would that, I mean, that sounds like it would pretty much drain our free cash.
No, it'd be the $1.2 million bond, which gets you to plus 1.1 is 2.3.
okay.
And then if the whole enchilada here is 2.5, 2.6, then it would be 200,000 in free cash. And there may be additional revenues, you know, I mean, there may be,
Okay.
and one of the things we couldn't nail it down was some of the variables on revenues are still unknown.
Okay,
Richard?
Yeah. The concern that I have had, and I will likely continue to have, is what are all the needs of the town? And I know this list is not all the needs. I know that for a fact. I suspect that this is not the highest priority needs of our entire community. Matter of fact, I know it's not the highest priority needs of our community if we were to objectively look at what we do know about our community right now. And I'm not sure how you're going to get there, but I know I will not be satisfied until I see movement in that direction, that these decisions are well thought out, they're well developed, and that we're allocating our money to the highest priority needs of this entire community every year. And I don't think we've done that because I don't think we've had the information has not been presented in a format that we were sure that that decision was. And I understand it's hard. I don't think it's simple. But, you know, we remember last year when we asked, we're all to him, I asked Mike, I said, what's your number one priority? And he turned up and said, North Interceptor Sewage Line, and it wasn't on the list. This is what I was trying to get at, is that I know we're going into different maintenance systems, and I hope that we're embracing different planning techniques and thought processes. But when we hit that point, then we will sit in this room. This shouldn't even be a debate exercise, Stephen. This should be a well-thought-out process and said, here is the 15 highest priority projects in our town, and there's our judgment priority. Please fund them, period.
Richard, I think I agree with you to some extent. I would argue that the prioritization exercise is a subjective one. Different people have different priorities, and I guess I anticipated that I did exactly just that. Here is the list of what I think are the priorities for this year, and then the select board, in making a recommendation through the budget to town meeting, looks at the available funds, the funding recommendations we've just set forth, and then takes my list of priorities that was not limited by funds per the directive, and either limits it, and we go through and say, subjectively, what are the priorities, or we say, we like the funding scenario you've laid out, and let's go ahead and do all the projects. But I think that's the moment we're at here in this discussion.
And actually, I think I agree there's a lot of things we need to do to make changes, but I'm afraid we're going to lose Mike. I know this is, and we have a lot of questions we've been wanting to ask. So we'll like to go through the projects and start asking.
Can I just, before we go in there, you know, we talked about $153,000 of levy limit that's out there, and I think we start to get into, just because it's there, we can use it. And I'd like to have Mr. Prosturzik explain what levy limit means to people before you start looking at all the projects, where we are in our levy limit, where we are with our levy limit minus debt exclusion. Can you explain to people what that means, levy limit, for the town in total when we hit 25?
The levy limit is defined with the Proposition 2.5 context. It's a computation that is made by starting to take last year's levy, adding the 2.5% to it, adding the taxable amount of new growth, whether people are adding garages or making improvements to the house, and you come up with a certain dollar levy at that point in time. You then add the debt exclusions to come up with your maximum allowable levy. So it's basically the maximum amount that we can raise through taxation under the provisions of Proposition 2.5. Right now, with the budget that is proposed and $1.1 million set aside for the capital program, taking into consideration all the other revenues, some of them being projected at this point in time, that I am projecting right now that we have excess capacity of $153,000 that we could additionally raise, because it is not being set aside for any operational budget, it is not being set aside for capital at this point in time. It is unused in all the projections that have been presented to you, whether they're budgetary for the operations or for the capital.
So my question is, where are we in terms of levy limit? What's our maximum and where we are? Because I know there's different computations that go into it.
You want the actual dollar amounts?
Yeah.
And
The estimate for FY '15. I'll give it to you in gross amount, I won't give it to you in the net amount. $46,308 and, I'm sorry, $46,308,835.
I think we're missing, I'm not explaining myself to you, and I apologize, because I'm thinking of something else and you're hearing something else.
Okay.
Mill rate, I guess in the levy limit, we have $25 maximum, is that correct?
We have a $25 maximum, but above and beyond that, we can add any effects of debt
That
exclusions.
is right, and where are we today in our?
Our tax rate this fiscal year, I think it was $23.15 per thousand.
But you can back out of that 23.15.
About $1.80 for debt exclusions.
So that puts us at 21 and change.
Correct.
21.50 for where we are. And
Correct.
25, what happens at $25?
When we hit $25, we can
We revalue everybody's property and we
well,
drop the number.
even with the values, if we hit $25, that's the highest tax rate that we can have. Again, let's put exclusions aside.
Yeah.
If we ever hit that, we would not be able to raise any more, whatever that computation is, our valuation times 25 per thousand, that would be the maximum we can raise in taxation.
And there's some variables with that, would say, like if housing goes up, then,
If the valuation goes up,
Valuation.
then at the 25, that's going to go up.
Paul, we
correspondingly.
really need to get through these
well,
projects.
I think the
and
select
then
board
we
needs to
also
have an
need-
understanding of where we are in terms of our debt ceiling. And unlike the federal government, we just can't raise it, and
Well,
we're
when
getting
we
there.
start talking about the budget, we can do a little bit more of that, but I want to be able to get through. And there's a lot of people here waiting to answer our questions, and I know there's a lot of questions that came up.
Marie,
So,
can I- but
yeah.
I'd like to ask a question, though, and I guess, Paul, the difference between $46,308,835 and that plus $153,000, which are the two, what's that different, so what's $153,000 mean to the tax rate? Is it 2 cents, 4 cents?
It's about 6 cents.
Okay. All right, let's start with the two replacement boilers for Williams for $100,000. I believe a motion went on the floor, and we're in discussion. Did we have any questions for either Mike Rabel or?
Yeah, why not rebuild them?
They're old boilers, they're Burnham boilers, they've been problematic since they've been installed. They're not just, it's not a problem unique to Long Meadow, it's, for the time they were built, it's been a long-standing problem. What we would have to do is take a section out. Burnham boilers used to give new sections, and they've done them all throughout Massachusetts. They used to give new sections when the section failed. Right now, we've had sections that fail. Basically, it'd be like in your car, putting in something to stop the leak, and that's what we've done to slow the leak. We did that last year. The boilers are, they've been very problematic. We don't know what section is going to leak next, so you don't know what section to order. When you take out a piece, they manufacture the piece to order. So if a section was to go out, if it was to go out today, you probably wouldn't have it for 3 months.
I'd add that new boilers will save you about $6,000 a month on heating costs.
You have any figures to back that up?
That's the figure Adrian Fanu provide that
I'd like to see figures to back
On
that up if you're
condensing,
going to make
a
a
newer
statement like that.
condensing.
I mean, it's an excellent thing, but I'd sure like to see backup. And then Mike
So-
can go ahead and talk, and then I'll go back and talk.
Mark?
Yeah, I guess my question, does the school require both boilers running in order to heat the school?
When it's very cold, you need both boilers. Both boilers run all the time, and they cycle in a lead lag scenario.
Just under, and I mention that only because under the scenario that we've got more demand than we have money, potentially, is there an economy of scale to replacing them both at the same time? Or do one this year and one next year, recognizing that the one we don't replace is no worse or better than it was, but it frees up I assume, half the money to do something else with it.
I don't think there's an economy of scale to replace them both. What you get is some certainty.
Plus the piping, that I'm sure at least all these things will all have to be changed around.
Well, I understand that, but that, I just was wondering if 11 months out of the year, except for when it gets 12 below zero or something outside, one new boiler will get us through another year, and then we can replace it later, because we've got...
It would run for 11 months, 10 or 11 months of the year. It's when it's very, very cold, as we've had this year, you need both boilers to run.
And these are gas-fired, or are they dual-fired? They're gas, okay, thanks.
They're dual fuel fired, but...
We don't use fuel oil, yeah, I know. Okay.
Right.
Paul?
One of the questions that was asked is there a backup to these boilers? Because, in some schools we had two, but one was really a backup. Is this just it?
Again, they both run. Sometimes this one runs, boiler A runs, and boiler B runs.
Right, but there's no backup to those
So they alternate back
two.
and forth. There's not 100% backup.
Okay.
Richard?
Yeah, the point the town manager made, his comment was a very interesting comment. I'd really like to have seen some documentation of that when this proposal came in, because that is a significant piece of information if there's truly a $6,000 savings at these boiler locations per month. Yes, Marie?
Could I just add, in my last district, we did it and we saved 46%. We tracked it over 2 years
Mhm.
in energy savings.
Yeah. Okay, and I guess then you'd be willing to give up $6,000 a month during the winter? And give it back so we could reallocate that money?
We can talk, Richard.
Okay. Let me ask you a hypothetical, Mike. If I were to tell you that the school was going to be dynamited down in 6 years, would this still be a sound decision for this town to make?
That's a judgment call.
I'm asking for your
Well, I
judgment call.
understand. I mean, if the boiler goes out in 6 months, if it dies in 6 months, then it was a very sound decision. If it lasts 6 years, then I can't predict how long it's gonna last.
Right.
So I just, first of all, being on the school building committee for the high school, I don't think you're gonna see a new school in 6 years.
You have to remain optimistic.
I just don't think, I saw how long it took the last time around.
I think if I can just jump on that point, we did go through this questioning about the middle school, and it is, I think as Mike said, it is at least a 6-year time frame. We've talked about it. I've talked about the superintendent. Again, this is one of the things when you analyze capital projects, one of the factors that the CPC looks at, the capital planning committee looks at, is what's the risk if you don't? And if the boilers are already, and this is how I evaluated it when I recommended it, the boilers are already problematic and they fail in the middle of winter, what happens to the kids attending the school? And so that goes into the risk of not taking action. I think the need has been demonstrated by the condition of the boilers.
The risk of both of those failing at one time is astronomical, and you know that, because he can take one and it's operational. So I'd like to remove that cloak of mystery and fear from this decision. And the information that you're sharing now would have been wonderful to have shared when we originally talked about these projects, and it wasn't shared. And I'll leave the discussion at that.
Okay, any other discussion or questions?
Has there been a failure rate of these over the last couple of years? I know you say you're plugging leaks.
Well, that's the problem, is that they leak, and then years ago, they would replace sections. Adrian's not here, and I can't tell you how many sections have been replaced over the years, but multiple sections in each boiler have been replaced in the last 12 years.
Okay.
They had several problems last year. This current year, we've been fortunate enough to not have any major problems. But last year was shaky.
Yes.
I just have a question. So, we have a motion on the floor right now for these two boilers, and if we vote for it, I mean, is the idea that we're gonna keep voting for things, and then whatever over the $1.1 million, we've essentially committed to bonding the rest of it? I mean, is that sort of the?
We can always move to decide to go back and you're going to remove or alter something, but let's get through the first.
No, I was just asking, I mean, because.
And that comes back to the highest priorities. It all comes back to that, but anyway, let it go.
I'm going to speak against this. I think we can get away with replacing one, based on what I heard tonight, and I don't know who asked the question, but I certainly believe that you know, if the issue is reliability and the issue is what we need, and we've got more projects than we have money, let's do one. That's my take on this. I'm gonna vote against it and then re-propose. If it goes down.
And you would have a
re-propose.
proposal possibly to change the other one next year?
Yeah, I think that would certainly be an intent.
Since there was no
Given the fact
economy
that
of
there was
scale.
no economies of scale.
As I said, I didn't get the prices. I'm sure there's a little bit of economy of scale, but,
Well, we're short $1 million in our capital needs.
Mark, are you making a motion?
No, there's a motion on the floor. I mean, I'll amend the motion. I propose we amend the motion to be $50,000, or I'll tell you what, I'll go $60,000 to replace one. That way we'll have.
You don't know if it's.
Well,
good.
but I know it's not half, because there's piping and stuff like that. So I'm gonna say we amend this to $60,000 and replace one boiler in the first year.
I have another question of Mike. If you got a new one in there, Mike, and put it, and change the alternating mechanism and put it as a primary, you'd have a brand-new boiler as a primary. And you could have the other one as a full-fledged backup. Is there any one time when both of these are on by demand?
when it's very cold.
Okay, so they do charge both on
Oh,
demand?
absolutely.
Yeah, no statistics on when?
No, I can't give you that.
Okay.
The only thing I'd like to offer is, again, we did a boiler replacement job when I was in Lancaster at City Hall, and the boilers looked almost exactly like the ones that are being replaced now. And the ones that we ended up getting, which I'm sure will be similar to what we end up with here, because there are high-efficiency condensing boilers, right? Not only were they substantially smaller, to have them work the best with the existing heating system to retrofit them in, they actually move them to a different location in the boiler room. And I think if you're gonna do one, you really, my concern is, and I haven't seen the specs or talked to Adrian about the specifics of it, but my understanding from going through our extensive process is that it really is a all-in type job. Otherwise, you make it more costly and, more risky that the system won't work properly. So I just offer that for food for thought. I mean, it seems like.
Is there a second on his amendment? No?
I'll second it so people can discuss it, but I got a question. Mike, if these boilers were placed in, let's say 6 years, 7 years, there was a new middle school, can those boilers be repurposed to another school?
If it's a proper size, yes.
Okay, so then my question would be is, how do you determine, so for example, if we look at our list of other boilers in town for them, especially, I don't know the last time, I say Center Schools maybe has one of the older ones, I could be wrong, but when my question is, if you look at the other boilers that we have in town and their need for replacement, is there a way to match up and say, in the time frame, if there was a new school, that this could technically replace this one? Is there, because then it makes it more, to me, it makes more sense to buy both of them. If there's a way
It could be
that-
relocated. One of the boiler that's on the budget for Glenbrook came from the high school.
Okay.
So it was repurposed years ago.
And I'm going to speak against the amendment. I think when you're putting in new to try to retrofit something, like you said, whether it's where it's going to be, we're looking at efficiencies, and I think it would be penny wise and pound foolish to try to match two different, a really old system up with the new system. Alex?
Well, I guess my concern is that if you do have failure for both, my understanding is that the school would have to be shut down for a substantial amount of time. And I think that needs to be said now, because if we do vote in a way that leads to that result, it will be on us. And I think we should be mindful of that potential consequence. And I think for the reason that Marie just pointed out about penny wise and pound foolish, it being more efficient to do it this way, and I just don't like the possibility of having to shut down Williams Middle School, because I don't think that we have any plan B for that. So I think we should stay with the original proposal.
So, should we, more on the amendment?
Yeah, the amendment specifically is, that the amendment allows us to get a new boiler in there. And other than the coldest days of the year, that new boiler will prevent us from having to shut down Williams Middle School now. So the amendment is intended to say, let's not, continue to have And I don't know what the risk factor is. Clearly, we've gotten through one of the coldest winters in the last 10 or 15 years with these boilers, and I'm just, I think we've got to stop saying it's old and therefore let's buy a new one, as opposed to it doesn't work and let's buy a new one. The mentality of it's old and let's buy a new one, we don't have the finances to do that anymore. And so that's my take on it. If it's broken, if we're spending more money, I mean, if we're really gonna save $6,000 a month, this shouldn't be based on it's old. We should be doing this because it's financially justifiable, it's got a 3-year payback. And just do it for a 3-year payback and take the money out of the fuel bill, just like we did for our IT department. Say, we're gonna reduce the fuel bill, bond these separately, and use the fuel savings to pay for the bond. And then we stop discussing it because it pays for itself, and if we really believe that. And this is the first I've heard it's gonna save us $6,000. $6,000 a month is a ton of money.
A ton of
That's
money.
true, it's $72,000 for $100,000. Now granted,
They're not running the full year, though.
Well, just for the
so
winter.
so they run for 4 months, okay. So it's still $50,000.
We've spent
It's a
over
4-year pay.
15 minutes on this one. We'll
But
never
you
get
know what,
through
but
it.
it's $100,000, Marie.
Okay,
It's
so-
$100,000 we may not need to do, and again, if it truly saves money, let's just do it as a cost savings, and we'll do quid pro quo. We'll cut the budget of the fuel cost and do it. But we don't have enough money to do all the projects we want. That's the dilemma today.
Stephen?
I guess if I just make another point, on the replacing, are we still discussing 2 versus 1?
Yes, because we're still on,
Right.
we haven't voted on the amendment yet.
I mean, the second boiler will need to be replaced as well. So at some point in time, we're gonna be back, to have a discussion about the other boiler. And I guess my fear is taking a project that's $100,000 and turning into a $115,000 project by phasing it. And I think that's, like I said, based on my understanding and based on my first-hand experience of how these things go, I think that's a real risk. And, yeah, I
Well,
don't
the
think, I
answer
don't.
should have been, there is an economy of scale, but I was told there was no economy of scale, so that's why I said, let's do half. If somebody had said it's 15 or 20% more, it says there's no economy, that there's.
Mark, I can't answer that question.
Then say you
Well,
can't
yeah, I
answer.
did.
it.
Yeah.
So, all those in favor of the amendment? Okay. All those opposed to the amendment? Okay. Now for the main motion in regards to the 2 boilers. All those in favor
Yes,
of...
since we have one more discussion
sure.
item, since there is going to be a savings of energy, and we have a projection, and we said 6,000 a month, and if it's on for 4 months or whatever the number is, I really, not having a discussion later, but having a discussion now of that money coming out of the fuel line item to pay for that, because I think that makes common sense, that if it's gonna benefit the Williams Middle School, then if we're gonna save $18,000 to $24,000 a year, I don't think it hurts to say there's a payback for that, which actually might pay for a bonding cost or something when you look at these total projects, which lets you do more. So I don't see how that's a negative thought here, and I think it's something that we need to at least discuss that. Is there a will to do that, because that pays for this, Mark, in a bond.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and I think that's a great thing to go to town meeting with.
I just want to add for a little perspective that the natural gas budget at Williams is $47.5 for the year.
Okay.
So again, I know a $6,000 a month
Yeah.
figure was thrown out, but it just, if that helps with any perspective. That's the full budget for the year. And they've spent a little over half at this point in time, or through the end of February, I should say.
All right, so all those in favor of the replacing the 2 boilers? All those opposed?
No, I'll vote for that.
I'm
Did
sorry.
you, which way did you?
I said, I'm in favor.
Okay, so was that 4? And
It's
all
3-2.
3-2.
Paul, did you vote?
I vote in favor, yes.
You
I
vote.
did.
Okay,
With
so
the-
3-2.
with the- And I just hope that as we proceed through the budget, we remember that when it comes time for allocations.
Okay. All right, now, the next is replacing the 3 air handlers in Building A, which I believe is this building right here, for the high school. Is there a motion? No? A motion on the floor?
I'll motion to,
Okay,
to accept the air handlers.
A second?
Yeah, I'll second it for discussion.
Okay, now discussion?
Yeah.
Mark?
I brought up some issues with respect to this over the last couple of weeks, or last week or so that we've been discussing it. And so I took it upon myself to talk to our, both co-chairs of our school building committee, because as we'd said, that the fans had been upgraded as part of the project. And I spoke to both Peter Greenberg and Bobby Barquette. And today I got an email, and I apologize, I didn't get this till after 5 o'clock, so I'm going to read it. This is from Tom Murphy, our project manager. And it says, basically the AHU, which is the auxiliary heating unit, is a metal box with coils and a fan and a means to control them both. We replaced the coils and controls and upgraded the fans, but left some of the existing fan components in place. They may have to replace a fan component in the future, but the box is not going to deteriorate. I think they budgeted for replacing the entire AHU, which I don't see as being necessary. Code, the town vendor, repaired one of the fan components when it broke previously, and I expect they could do that again. If parts were a concern, they could order parts and store them now and replace as necessary. That's Tom Murphy's statements. And when I talked to Bobby Barquette, I asked specifically from the school building committee, why did they choose the approach they did? And they said, because we believe we return them to well-functioning condition. If there's a concern about the pieces of equipment, and his it's a paraphrase, not a quote, that it may be broken or is broken, which should be addressed by the school building committee to have them take care of it as part of the project, because they believe that they took care of it. So I just believe that, this issue is, as I tried to describe it previously, that both Gilbane, Tom Murphy, who's our OPM, our owner's project manager on the project, and our school building committee co-chairs believe that these fans are in adequate or acceptable condition. And Bobby's only comment was, or his comment was, unless there's new information we, the SBC, are not aware of, there's nothing wrong with these fans. And that's his direct quote.
Now, Mark, I know you had talked about buying parts. Was that recommended by them at all?
Well, I had only said buy uninstalled parts. If we're concerned about long delivery items, and with I had no interaction with Tom Murphy, and he said the same thing, that if parts were a concern, they could order parts and store them now and replace as necessary. And I think that Tom Murphy's to say the same thing. If they're, it's a common practice in engineering systems and maintenance. If you have critical parts that are long delivery items or difficult to get, instead of spending $150,000, we spend $10,000 or $15,000 or $20,000, and we buy those critical parts. We put them somewhere on a shelf so that we don't have to wait 2 weeks. But I think that I am implying, or I guess I'm inferring from what they've said, that there's a definable list of parts that could be purchased.
Steve?
I did, just when I was sitting next to Tony from Gilbane, who was the general contractor's project manager, and we were having this discussion. He leaned over to me and said, yeah, they're done, they've lived their life, they should be replaced. So I got a bit of a different message there.
I got the same message that Stephen got.
So it's one of the things that framed my thinking when I recommended this, and discussing it with Mike and Adrian, that there was a lead time on parts. The building, substantial portions of this wing would be out without heating and cooling and fresh air, and that it was not as Tom, I think, had related. But it's, I guess I'll.
So, Mark, are you?
They did do some improvements to the boxes, and we're not proposing they replace the whole air handler unit. We programmed in $50,000 each per unit to go through and replace the guts. They didn't replace all the guts and all of the units. They just did one side, one part of it. There's still fans, motors, shafts, gearings, shivs. They put a preheat coil, so preheating is like within inches, 6 inches of a damper, the inlet damper. We feel that's a likely place where that could freeze up in the future. We could, I spoke to Adrian, we could order parts for the tune of $12,000, $13,000 and have for one unit, assuming that they're not all gonna fail at the same time. So that we could get replacement parts. That doesn't pay for the installation, that just pays to have the parts on hand.
Mark, are you looking to amend the motion to
Not at
allow
all.
for the parts?
No, those are maintenance, they're not capital items. I mean, I don't think capital can pay for parts.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, well, it's, my feeling has been all along that they had to have had strong justification to spend $70,000 on those units, and there was strong engineering support of that decision. And I rest with the abilities of that design team. This was not a low-level design team or low-level construction firm that made these decisions. It sounded like they did a lot more than we originally thought.
It was an SBC decision.
Yeah, I mean, they were making, well, there was an engineering support that this was a valid decision.
There was a variety of, and not to get into a big discussion, but there were a variety of options of different things on the project that were desirable. And this did not come as high as some other options.
But they still spent $70,000 on an item that could have been totally changed for $150?
No, it probably would have been about 300,000. With the 150 is what we're asking for parts to rebuild the 3 units.
Any other questions or comments?
I'd like to just make a comment. We've heard this from Mark in a couple of meetings prior about the recollection that he had from this letter that he read. I understand, and I think Stephen made a comment that actually would be cheaper this way than do it through the school building committee, and I'm assuming because of wage laws and things like that. But my concern is that this was, I would have hoped, a project that the school building committee looked at, which I'm assuming they did, in terms of the air handlers. It was denied for some reason or not in the project scope to upgrade them. And I think one of the things that I'd like to see is one of the 2 chairs of the school building committee to come in and and tell us why they decided that, because I think there's some issues. My concern is transparency, that this is related to the school building project, and now we're pushing it off to a capital plan. And I have a concern. My concern is that it was done to limit any type of overruns in a school building project, and I could be 100% wrong. That if you push it off the capital plan, it's now no longer on the books for the school building project. And whether you pay for your right hand or your left hand, I know it doesn't matter, but it matters in terms of transparency and the cost of the project. I really, you talked to Tony and you've got a letter from someone else. I'd like to find out, because they're technically on the same team, and I don't get how we're getting 2 answers from the same team. They're not on the same team?
Not really. I mean, Tom Murphy's job is to basically be our agent in holding the general contractor, over a barrel for the duration of the contract to make sure, to fight change orders and do things like that. So they're really, especially now they're at the end of the project, they're on opposite sides. But I guess, from my perspective, since I came in near the end, the way it looks to me, and if I have it wrong from the people who've been around longer, I hope they'll correct me, but the way it looked to me, kind of objectively taking in all of the facts with no background or knowledge or history or baggage on this, is that the decision, which I think at the time was probably a sound one, to not do what we're proposing here, was based, I think, largely because of the MSB reimbursement. And the town would have paid for 100% of this no matter what. So they said, well, let's save that money in the project budget for something that's going to get reimbursed by the MSBA. And I think that was the base of the decision. So the need to do this additional work then wasn't known until months or possibly years later so that decision was made like a couple years ago during design, right?
We had discussions a long time ago, but again, there was a budget, there was a cap,
But that design decision was made long before, it was made a long time ago.
Yes,
a year ago.
years ago.
Right, so the breakdown in the air handling, in the RTU that triggered this request occurred in August. So the gap between that decision and the failure of the RTU, I think everyone thought we're fine, but when the RTU failed in August, it said, geez, maybe we need to rethink this decision we made, and that's how we're here. But, you know, and I'll make one more comment, and then I'll turn it back over to the board, but, you know, Mark, in terms of your phasing, this is a project I think that could be phased.
So a partial funding, you're saying?
Do one a year.
You know,
Mark?
again, I apologize because they're not here, neither Peter or Bobby are here, but both of them said, if things have changed, it's broken, go back to the SBC, because, for example, you know, they could break tomorrow, but for example, this week, controllers failed in buildings B and C, brand new controllers. And they said, and they were on top of it. You know, now they're under warranty clearly, but they feel and expressed to me an obligation to take care of their obligation for the school, which is still under, whether it's renovated or not, under break-in. And, you know, we're gonna, you know, I'd rather see it bonded than come out of our capital. We're already over the town's pre-agreed upon amount for the school project. Another few dollars, $100,000 or whatever it is, you know, doesn't change where the money comes from. It still comes out of the town's pocket. It does get allocated to a project that should have been. And I think they've got better input. I agree with Paul. I mean, you're hearing something from Tony, from Gilbane. I spent a ton of time talking to my peers who are the chairs of the school building committee. You know, but Rob Alger weighed in on it, Tom Murphy weighed in on it, and nobody has said to me, yeah, but, not a maybe, not a what if, and Bobby's only concern, and I quoted that, was if things have changed, you know, unless there's new information, we're not aware there's anything wrong, and if there is new information, it should go back to the school building committee. Based on that, how can I, in good conscience, vote to support this?
So let's go ahead with the vote, okay?
Well, I'm just trying to explain to
Can I answer that question, though?
What's
Briefly, Marie?
No.
The answer is, to put it back to the SBC would then make it a part of probably the Gilbane general contract, which I think would add cost to the
And
project.
that's what Paul just said, and you said no. He said because it adds more cost. But you know what? It's their responsibility. We don't have enough money. And you know what?
They don't have enough money. That's why it's not part of the project.
See, that's my point.
It's exactly what was taken off the
That's
list.
why it was taken off, Mark.
Well, that's not what they're saying today.
And Mark, we had problems all summer long, that's a known fact. The air quality has not been good, they've shut down repeatedly, Adrian's been up on the roof numerous times.
Marie, with all due respect, then you should complain to the contractor, because they did it. And they
We
say
call
they've
them
gotten
every
not
day.
one. Well,
I'm
they
holding
claim not to
weekly
have
meetings with them,
one.
Mark. I'm
They said they
holding
didn't.
my feet to the fire.
Well, they said they haven't gotten one on these air handlers. I gotta go by what I'm hearing.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Who votes
sorry.
in favor of replacing the 3 air handlers for $150,000? Okay, who oppose? Okay, let's move on. To the next item is the kitchen renovations down at the adult center.
I move we approve the kitchen renovation recommendation at the adult center.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, discussion.
Yes, I see Emily's hiding behind Yem, but I see you there. I had a question, and my question was real simple, is that we have a grant that funds the refrigerator. Let me go backwards. We were told that the refrigerator does not meet code. And I think Mr. Foster looked up and said, no, it's not that, it's the grant requirements of it. So my question is, are we replacing this because we receive a grant for food and it doesn't meet its requirements, or are we replacing it because it's broken down, or what? That's what I was asking.
So I think that you've heard it incorrectly. It's not the refrigerator.
Yeah.
You can come over
Go
there.
to Stephen.
Stephen.
You could be a Stephen.
Oh, sweet. See you next week.
No kidding, huh? It's all yours.
Can I move it?
Yeah, I get it, Mike.
It's not the refrigerator. The refrigerator's fine. It's the kitchen itself. It isn't up to the standards of what kitchens are supposed to be. I think if you came in there, you would see it. trying to describe how they like it. So the stainless steel and the stainless steel kitchen that they do cooking, that we do, it's all supposed to connect. There's supposed to be no spaces in between where, you know, dirt and various other food particles can go down there. You're supposed to have non-porous countertops. We have some wood countertops in there. I mean, we have these surfaces that are just dirty because they've been in the building
You
for
don't want to say that too loud.
well,
That's it. I don't like it.
my staff do a phenomenal job of cleaning, and the janitors are in there cleaning the floors and whatnot, so I will say that. But when it gets up to the really good kitchen standards, we aren't there. And so, yes, we still pass as of right now, but what was told to us is that we are dangerously close to losing it if we don't do something about this. We serve 21,000 meals a year, approximately, and it's our biggest program. It would be a shame to lose the funding when the Friends of Long Meadow Senior Citizen, you know what I mean, Feloka, are gracious enough to fund it without the town funding the nutrition program. All we're asking is that you help us fix that very old kitchen.
Okay, and then, so let me just, if you don't mind, if I can ask you a couple of questions since you're up here already. And when you say it wouldn't pass inspection, is that health?
No.
No.
It's their standards for what a kitchen should be, to be a meal site.
Okay, and who, I guess that.
Health probably should play a
Okay.
part in that, and I can bring Beverly in.
And the only other question that I asked was, have we looked at, because I know there was a meeting I was at in which you approached the Council on Aging Board for help with it. Have we looked at that, them and Feloka, have they been requested to fund it, and or part of it or some of it, and how did that end up?
They haven't at this point, because
Okay.
quite honestly, if I may speak frankly, it's a town building.
Understand.
Feloka is already funding the nutrition program and a variety of the programs that are in there. It's a town building. Why shouldn't this be a capital project?
Well, on my counterpoint to you, the only thing I would say is that Feloka funds the meals program. If there was no funding from Feloka, there'd be no need for a kitchen. That's all I'm saying.
Any
That's
other
true.
questions for?
I do. Just to clarify, Emily, when you said it doesn't pass their inspection, does that mean Feloka's inspections?
No,
or-
Greater Springfield Senior Services gives us a
Okay.
pretty good grant toward our nutrition program. If we didn't have that, it would be difficult to fund.
Any other
Thank you.
questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor?
Oh, I just want to think, this is for the complete kitchen renovation?
Yes.
Okay.
All those in favor?
No.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Now, actually, you might not want to move.
That's why I was waiting. I was waiting to
Okay.
move.
Looking for a motion for the bathroom exhaust project for $12,000.
For discussion, I make a motion, we approve the bathroom exhaust project for a sum of $12,000.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion. Richard?
I'd like to have somebody tell me why it's going to cost $12,000 for an exhaust system for 2 bathrooms. Now, I want one of these engineering types to
It's
tell
my
me.
recommendation. If I want to defer, I'll happily
Do
do
you
that,
have the
Richard.
engineering backup and the cost estimates?
I do not. But they were based on experience with similar projects.
Okay, I want, then the answer to my question is not available tonight. Then we have no actual backup besides based on some personal feelings from another job.
That's true.
Okay, because I asked this before, I asked, give me some details. Okay, that's.
Richard, can I just, for a process
Sure,
standpoint,
sure.
this was not, as you can see, this was not on my list of recommendations, but it was on the capital planning committee's recommended list. So that's part of the reason why I didn't backfill with more detailed information, but it was definitely capital planning committee's recommendation.
Yeah, because I know there was no details, and I did ask about this, because this seems to be an inordinate amount of money for ventilation for 2 restrooms. That was my gut reaction, and that's why I asked for some details to substantiate that pricing, and there's no problem, I'm sure the issue's going to be voted on and approved, but I've not had my needs met to process after asking, so.
Did you want to speak to the
Yeah,
project?
I would just like to clarify one part. It actually isn't for just 2 bathrooms.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, the one system does 3 different rooms, one being the food pantry, which has no windows or any way for any of the air or gases in there to be expelled from the building. It's over 50 years old, so it doesn't work to the standards that are, well, no, it doesn't work. Am I allowed to say that?
I don't know.
I've had people in there to work on it, and I can safely say it does not work to the standards that anyone would be okay with.
Do you have any is there any support for this that doesn't work?
I have nothing other, Adrian had some experience over at Williams Middle School, and that is where the price was generated from.
Okay. I again express what I said before, what I have so much stress with some of the projects that brought forth, because the very basic answers are not there for basic questions. And I think we have every right in the world to ask, do we have some type of design or some type of cost estimate for a $12,000 expenditure? And that's it. I'm not saying you don't need a fence. I'm just asking questions and I can't get answers, so I feel very uncomfortable. I mean, I wouldn't do it at my home. I wouldn't expect anybody to do this based on a $12,000 estimate with no paperwork. I'm sorry.
And Alex?
One thing I wanted to clarify, because on your sheet, it says the capital planning committee recommends. I looked this up. Unless something changed from their PowerPoint, they listed that as not recommended. And I guess I'm kind of interested in what their rationale was, because, you know, the way Emily is described.
I don't think their spreadsheet.
No, because I remember Dr. Metz saying, I hear you, but then he corrected it verbally.
Oh, he did?
He said that, even though,
all right.
because that was actually from the town manager's presentation.
No, this is the CPC.
I hear you, but he corrected it. He said they did recommend.
Okay.
Which is why we're seeing it at all.
Yeah, he specifically said anybody who's been in there
Yeah.
on a, you know, after mealtime knows that there's a need for an exhaust system.
Right.
And he put in those, that's one of the reasons why it sticks out.
Okay.
The reason why
All right, I believe
I
it.
adjusted their spreadsheet, there were a couple of things I picked up that I
Okay.
remember clearly as recommendations that weren't moved over. And it was because he
Okay.
put in those terms, I said, yeah, that's not with me.
Are we aware that there is test equipment that brings us these readings that they use for designing the duct systems, and that's how you get cost estimates? I know that the engineering department's aware of that. And these are the type of things that I would kind of hope we had done. You remember I mentioned the estimate, the paperwork that come in from the Genesis for the justification on the generator? I would suggest that maybe we all look at that paperwork and see the type of stuff that is brought forward for the project justification.
Can I make a general comment? I don't want to belabor the point, but Richard, you're right on this. And this is my first time at the capital planning rodeo here. And I didn't get in and micromanage the forms or the intake of information or what was given, because I just assumed that this is what's happened in years past. And I think when I asked the department head said this is how we've done it, and I think the Community Preservation Act has followed the same process for many years, and they've told me that. Capital Planning Committee has also followed the same process. I didn't get the sense that there was a gap in the level of information until we got to this level and started talking about these projects. I assumed that the information that was presented was sufficient to make decisions in the past, because projects have continued to be approved year after year. Your point is well taken. In my mind, it has highlighted areas that we certainly could improve on in terms of reporting, the application process, what we get. You know, I did submit this packet of supplementary information with more details, Richard. And that should have gone under the cover of the project application form, not after a supplemental, and that's something we're going to work on for next year's capital improvement plan. So you're absolutely right. In this one, the exhaust fan, I think it was, because it was a small item and I wasn't going to recommend it, I didn't press for detailed information.
Okay, so let's,
Did we make you made a motion,
yeah, the
right?
motion's on,
Okay.
so all those in favor of the exhaust fan project?
Can I just have a caveat with this, is that we approve it with the understanding that we're gonna get a real cost estimate before it goes to town meeting? And I
Well,
think that's
it's good.
doable, right?
I think, no, that was not an amended motion.
Yes, we can
Yeah, let me just-
drill on the cost a little more.
Okay.
Sure.
Just so that we have it.
The
now.
request form says there is a quote from an HVAC contractor. That's what I looked for, was something that showed air quantities and all that. You know the stuff.
Debbie, did you get the vote?
I mean, Mike and Yem know me very well that I'm
Oh,
going to
you go
ask
to
these
four.
questions.
5-0, yeah. That's-
There wasn't a DPW project.
Yeah, it didn't come to me.
Right.
Okay, so did you get the vote, Debbie, Paul?
Yeah,
Did
that's
you?
fine.
Yeah, I vote for it, yeah.
You did,
Put in by
okay.
Adrian.
All right, so let's move forward to the fire truck annual contribution of $40,000. was recommended, town manager recommended 35. Do we have a motion to approve the 40, and then we'll start the discussion?
Yes.
Second?
Second.
Okay, discussion, Richard.
Yes, take it to 75,000. I checked the paperwork, and that's what was recommended, I think 2 years ago. I think you'll find it on the warrant.
So is that an amendment to the motion?
Yes, that's an amendment to the motion, and that's what we mentioned
Right.
before, that one needs to go up. The 35,000 is an insufficient amount of money if that fund is to be used for its intended purpose.
Is there a second to his amendment?
Second.
Okay.
We're fighting along.
Discussion on the amendment? Yes.
Now, one of the sheets that we got before, I believe it's entitled Long Meadow FY 2015 Capital Funding Recommendations. So I was looking at this, it had underneath 35,000 and then referred to community preservation 40,000.
No, that's community, it shouldn't say community, that
It's
should be
capital
CPC.
planning. Capital
That's-
planning.
Oh, no, but it says, okay, so that's
Yeah.
wrong. Because I was just wondering, maybe that's where the 75,000 was.
No, I think,
Okay,
yeah,
so-
but I could see
all
where
right.
you would think that.
Okay,
Mhm.
so, right, so the point is that the town manager said 35 and the community preservation.
No, CP, capital,
CPC
Yeah.
said
Mhm.
40.
40.
And your motion is for?
It was set at 75, I think, 2 years ago?
2 years ago.
2 years ago. And for somehow it's reverted back. We don't know how it reverted back, but it should
I
have.
think that may have been the fire chief's request, but I gotta look that up.
Well,
So-
it's on an 8-year replacement cycle, Stephen, and the cost of the equipment's $500,000 to $650,000.
Which is why it was bumped up.
Yeah, that's why it was bumped up.
So is the, could I have a vote on the amendment to take it to 75? All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, and so I guess we don't need to worry about the original motion because we now have it at 75, right?
No, we still got to vote on it.
Vote on the
gotta vote on the
motion
original
to,
motion.
for approval?
Because
All those
the
in favor?
75 goes in there.
All those in favor? Okay.
Right.
Now let's move down, and the way we're going to handle all of the DPW equipment,
Oh, God.
okay, is there any that we can just, that there's no disagreements on? Richard, wasn't there a few that you said you had no problems with?
Meeting warrant is $75,000.
You put me on the spot.
I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah, whatever I sent out today, I didn't have any questions on whatsoever.
Oh, I just was reading that now. So,
There's a, I think there's a factual, again, there's a discrepancy in the numbers.
well, let's stick to this page. That's why I
Well,
wanted
what
us
I'm
all
sa-
working
what
on
I-
the same.
What I'm questioning is whether your numbers are correct. And
Well, because these come from also the enterprise funds will pay for part of it.
no, but that's my point. But if you don't, I don't know where you want to take it up, but I think we have to make sure these numbers are correct at some point in this process.
Okay, so let's start from is there a problem with one-ton dump truck with plow? There was a question on that, so we're going to skip that one. We'll go to grounds one-ton truck with plow and lift gate. Was there a problem with that, Richard?
That's one where I have a question about the numbers, because it appeared not to be consistent with the spreadsheet we got before. So it's got listed at 79,450, which under this sheet was the total cost of the thing. The sheet that I have here has it being split between the general fund and the sewer and water funds. And the way you've got it is that it's all under the general fund.
Well,
it's just a
Okay.
discrepancy. I don't know if it's been reallocated since the first sheet or not.
well, first of all, grounds one-ton truck, are you going to speak against that, Richard? Was there a problem
No,
with
no,
that?
the
Okay.
G4?
Yes.
So I think it's supposed to be 39,725.
So what is the correct number, Stephen, should it be capital 79,450, or is some of that going out of the enterprise fund?
It should all be general fund.
It should all be general. So the correct number on the spreadsheet, 79,450.
Is that just a correction to our first sheet then?
Yeah,
Yeah, it would be a correction. It should all be general fund.
I mean, the reason why I'm asking is because, I mean, obviously, somebody at some point thought it ought to be split.
Right, yeah, I'm looking at the same thing you are, Alex, I mean, that,
Well, right now, the recommendation is 79,450 from the capital. Okay, so is there a motion to approve the Grounds One Town truck with plow and lift gates for 79,450?
Yeah.
So moved.
Okay?
So moved.
And there's
Second.
a second, okay. Discussion. Any questions or problems other than we're definitely sure it's going with the,
Well, but it's ground, so it wouldn't be charged to water and
it's
sewer.
because it's grounds, okay.
Okay.
All right, so, no discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now let's go to the next one, which is the backhoe. Is there a problem with backhoe?
Yep.
Okay, let's skip down and go to, highway SUV. Is there a problem with that one?
That M1?
That's-
Oh, no, that's that H16?
816.
Is there a problem with that one?
Yep.
Okay, let's move down to maintenance PU with plow.
M1?
pickup.
It's 41,360.
Yep, that's per plan.
Is that fine? Okay.
plan.
So is
Can I
there,
just ask a question, just a general question? I'll make a motion to approve that.
is there a second?
Okay, the difference between that and a one-ton, because I know this is a pickup, but the one-ton truck with a plow is, or with a liftgate, is a significant increase in cost, the liftgate, or just because it's one ton? That, I meant to ask that
It's a
one.
heavier duty truck.
But is it the liftgate that adds a
No,
lot to
The
it?
lift gate is a few $1,000s.
Okay, but it's the truck itself, not the liftgate. Okay, thank you. So I'm sorry, I just got off track. of what
Any
the-
other questions on that vehicle? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, let's
Which
move
one just
on.
got passed?
Is there any problem with the
pick-
engineering
maintenance pickup
administrative
with-
sedan?
With plow.
Which number, the HE1?
Vehicle
Is
numbers
that
off.
HE1? I don't have that on my spreadsheet.
There's not a real problem. I gave an explanation. There's confusion on the data, but both of them are actually in there to be replaced. There's numbers messed up.
Okay.
You were working me overtime trying to figure out numbers.
Which,
I can get with you offline on it, Mike.
okay.
It's not major, but the good part is both of those, whichever they are, there was confusion on the paperwork, top to the bottom of the paperwork. There was different data. But yes, that one's on the plan.
Is there a motion to,
So moved.
in a second? Okay, any discussion? All those in favor?
Sorry, that was a skid steer?
No, that
It's the administrative
Okay.
sedan.
HE2.
Yep,
HE1, HE2?
2.
Is there a question on, is there a problem with the skid steer?
Yeah.
Okay. How about, and the last one, it doesn't, is on the enterprise fund
Not a
only.
problem, questions.
Okay, so I was going to go back up to the WS4WD
sewer,
is
forward.
water sewer, so we don't need to deal with that right now. So let's go back up to the one-ton dump truck with plow 974. Do I have a motion to approve it and a second for discussion?
Which one is that, Marie?
We're
very
going right
first
back
one
to the
under
first one now.
You meant H3?
That's 974.
974 or H3, okay.
Is there a motion to approve it?
I'll move we approve
A
it.
second? Okay, now discussion. Richard?
Yeah. Mike, I think you've likely had an opportunity to read what I had?
What you had?
Yeah. Did you get what I sent to Stephen today?
No, I did not.
Okay.
No, I didn't get this till now. You didn't send me the document, Richard. That was not in the email.
Ooh, I'm sorry.
It's the first time I saw it was right here.
I am truly sorry.
But we did, Mike and I did talk about this.
Okay, last year,
Yeah, I meant to have two.
last year, we did have approval to replace a truck.
Right,
A different truck blew an engine.
right, 995 Blue and
995 blew the engine.
Okay, 995 is shown on here to surplus.
So that truck was phased out.
Yeah, but you can't replace it.
So then we'll do 991, which is the same year, 1991, it's a different truck.
Yeah, I understand.
It fits in with the same scenario. It's a different vehicle.
Okay, I guess the question I have is what is this inventory for if we replace 995? Now, the real problem I've got with it, Mike, and I'll be honest with you, 995 was brought up again when Barry was here. We went through the same issue with this particular truck. As you remember, I have the email documentation when I questioned Barry on this 995, that they were trying to replace it then, and it shouldn't be replaced.
I did not do a lot of this year, Richard. I was out for a good part of December.
Okay, and I can appreciate that, but I would employ the town manager to please make sure this inventory is followed. there are way, way, way too many discrepancies that have been noted in a very casual overview of this.
I will say, Mike and I went through some of those that you identified, the skid steer, the backhoe, and a few others, Richard.
Yeah.
And it was clarifying for me, where I don't think there are as many discrepancies, but we can go through that. On this
Okay.
one, you're absolutely correct, it was supposed to be surplus. I think, as Mike relayed to me, the truck gets used every day. So that's where intuitively, even though we do have the plan, and we should commit to following it, intuitively, the disconnect was, well, we're gonna surplus a vehicle that we use every day and have a need for. So that's something he and I have talked about, and, you know, as, you know, I guess if we need to, surplus it and wait and see how things go, that's the will of the board.
It was studied in depth with the concurrence of the Director of Public Works. It's not a question, are we gonna check and see what happens, in fact, we get rid of the thing.
I agree, and I'll take blame for the inattention.
We have.
If it had said 991, I don't know if we would be having a conversation,
Yeah.
because 995 is gone.
Well, your problem started when I read on the justification that 995 had blew an engine, you replaced it.
I understand.
And I can't overemphasize the fact the number were even registered with me, and I don't work down there.
I understand.
So are we now scrapping 974? You're not asking for it to,
Replace it, yes.
you're not asking for it a replacement at this time?
No, 995 is gone.
It was replaced.
No, I'm saying
995 was
974.
replaced, no, 995 was disposed of last year.
And it was replaced. You replaced 995. You took the money for the truck last year and replaced 995 instead of the one that you've got this year. And now this one's come back up for replacement this year. You have an extra truck in your fleet.
There's not an extra truck in the fleet.
Over this survey it is.
Well, are you still interested in 974?
Yes.
You are, okay.
So it's a 1997 truck.
And you're saying it
That one's-
shouldn't be on the fleet plan at all?
It should, there has to be a truck that's surplus of that classification. That's what the report showed. Stephen's looking at the report right now. It's down at the bottom. There's a big blue line to it.
Oh, you're right.
That was 995. So
Yeah.
we replaced that, so we have one extra truck in our fleet right now that should have been replaced, or should have been surplus.
I honestly think the number should have been 991. I think Mike is right, because if you look at it, it's the same vehicle, except it's 2 years older.
Well, 995 comes up again, too, so we'll get to the second time it comes up.
Well, are we looking to scrap this one or to change 974 to 991? Are we looking to just change the number?
Change the number.
If we are going to be in compliance with our fleet authorized plan, we have to remove a truck of that classification from our fleet. We did not do it when the truck blew an engine. We replaced it instead of scrapping it. That's if you want to maintain consistency with this fleet study that we
Okay.
paid for.
Any other, yes?
I've got to tell you, I am completely confused. I'm serious. And so I'm not going to vote for this until, I can't figure out which truck got, I mean, we talked about it last time. Are we, it almost feels like an Abbott and Costello routine, 997. I mean, like, you know, could somebody explain this? I mean, is this a disagreement with the fleet study? If so, I could understand that. And if so, could you explain why you're disagreeing with the fleet study? Or is it consistent with the fleet study? And if so, could you explain that?
I think it's consistent with the fleet study. It's that we had the wrong truck number in as being replaced.
In the fleet study?
Correct. Or in the proposal for this year.
So you would prefer to just change the number 991, but the amount would be the same?
Correct.
And you're saying that doesn't work because we've got to get rid of the truck?
Time out.
Okay, I'm just trying to...
Time out. Last year, we were going to replace truck 974.
Mhm.
And it was approved for replacement, correct, Mike?
Correct.
Okay, in the process between the purchase being approved and that truck being ordered, 995, which is an identical type truck, blew an
Okay.
engine.
Okay.
So Mike, instead of replacing 974, took the funds and replaced 995.
Yes.
The error being 995 was shown on the fleet survey to be surplus,
You're correct, Richard. I apologize.
and it was never surplus. So now he's come back wanting to replace 974, and I'm saying, we've got one extra truck. So pick the weakest truck you got in that classification, Mike, and get rid of it, and you're fine. I mean, you could get another truck in here this year anyway, but we just can't increase the fleet back.
It would be 974, which is the oldest truck, and it's.
Okay, but do you have one that you'd like to replace this year?
991.
Okay, 991, okay, then if
So
that be.
we'll surplus out the 974.
974,
And
Okay.
replace 991.
and bring it in with 991.
All right, and so it's the same amount of money, but what we're talking about is cross out 974, and it really doesn't change our motion, but 991 will be the truck, and you are still surplusing one.
Yes.
And you're surplusing
What we did.
974.
He's gonna
Okay.
surplus this one
Any
and
other
replace
question
991.
in regards to the purchase of the one-ton dump truck with plow?
My question is, this is kind of bizarre, and I know, Richard, you've got your spreadsheets galore, and
Yeah, I'm buried
you've done
in
your
it.
homework, and I'm
We're
not-
following his lead.
with Alex on this in terms of what was here is not here, and now we're replacing. So my question is, here's a good question, I think, is that if the truck last year was supposed to be surplus, and we weren't supposed to buy a truck last year, for example, right, because it was supposed to be surplus.
We were gonna when we were gonna buy this 974 last year, it was approved.
All right, so that was approved and it was done.
Right.
Then that would take a truck out of the cycle this year, correct?
Theoretically, you're absolutely right, Paul. It pulls one up a year early on cycle.
But that
Which,
was
pardon?
mechanical failure.
Pardon?
It was due to the mechanical
Oh,
failure.
no, we're talking about the regular program, because Mike now has put in, Mike said he's gonna surplus 974 and put 991
We're
in.
gonna buy one truck and eliminate two.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
difference.
Okay.
Eliminate
So
last
we're
year's
not,
truck we
he's
didn't
not
plus this
expanding
year's
his
truck.
fleet, he's keeping to the fleet management plan. So all those in
No,
favor?
hold on, I got a
Okay.
question. We just come up with new trucks that are on here that aren't here. You're gonna have one truck instead of two, but the truck that was supposed to be surplused out last year, we bought a truck.
Mhm.
Okay, so now we're actually gonna have two trucks and
No,
one's taking.
one blew an engine, it was sold. And we
Correct.
replaced it instead of leaving it sold. If they just let it sold and disappeared and replaced the one that was on the sheet, we would have been in fine shape.
All right, so we're even, but we replaced it.
Yeah, but
So
he
now
went
we're up
back and he
one.
replaced the wrong one.
But we're up one.
Yeah,
So-
we're up one.
So now we're gonna place another truck that
We're
might have
But
been
he's
the
getting
one.
rid of two.
He's getting rid of two.
Now
So
we're back to even
Richard's
Steven.
happy.
No, because you're gonna buy two trucks and you're gonna
No.
get
No,
back
he's
to-
getting rid of two, buying one.
Was
And
that
the-
truck ever surplused out last year? Where'd it go?
No,
Because
it-
that's what you're talking
Blew
about.
an engine.
It blew an engine, it was sold as junk.
Yeah. The only flaw there is, in Paul, I see where you're skidding in there, it does change the fleet acquisition plan a little bit, because it punches a truck a year early in cycle. That's what it really does. 991 is gonna jump up 1 year ahead of cycle. And I noticed that our tire program this year is sitting at about 440,000, so it really is a little bit higher than it should be, because I think, weren't you in the 350 range, Mike? 350 to 400,000 range?
Four to 4.25.
Yeah, okay, depends on which chart you read, but that's the only flaw that could happen.
But we're moving in the right direction.
Oh, you always say we're moving in the right direction.
But Maureen, just a
Yes.
question. The spreadsheet had this paid 50% general and 25 water and sewer. That's still the plan?
And I'll verify that tomorrow.
All right.
All right. All those in favor of the 991 truck for $37,695? What we were just talking about.
Are you splitting it with the enterprise fund?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what
Okay.
Mark just pointed out.
Okay, I thought you said, oh yeah, that one's still enterprise. Well, I voiced my concern before that I think we have a lot of equipment against enterprise funds that we very likely can't justify with the hours. And that's gonna be up to Steve and them to find that out, and they'll be back here in 3 years, and they'll say, well, you've gotta put 500,000 more back in the base budget, because we've been overcharged in the enterprise. But I like to be on the outside, sitting home watching this on TV, and I'll say, told you so.
Okay,
Okay.
We voted, all those in favor? Alex, where are you? Are all
I'm
those
against it.
opposed?
I still don't understand it, so I'm
Okay.
not voting
I'm
for
opposed
it.
'cause I'm-
Okay, so 3
I
to
don't
2.
think we've had the right
This one,
explanation.
it's okay, Alex.
Okay, it's fine,
Okay.
but I'm not gonna vote for it if I don't understand it.
And now the backhoe, what are the problems with the backhoe?
The backhoe, Mike, on the inventory was supposed to be replaced with a mini excavator.
There are 3 backhoes at DPW.
Uh-huh.
2 in the highway department.
Right.
If you go through that spreadsheet that you had, go
Right.
down to the bottom.
Right.
The grounds department backhoe
Right.
is the one that, when it gets replaced, is recommended to be replaced with the mini excavator.
Mm-hmm. You'd say the unit, as far as I could see, the unit that you got up for
G3 or
replacement.
G4?
It's
right?
G5.
G5?
G5?
That's not the one we're replacing. We are proposing to replace the older of the 2 DPW, the older of the 2 highway department backhoes.
H9.
Okay, well, let me,
So the one that's gonna be replaced with a mini excavator will remain in the fleet again this year, and then when it does get replaced, it will be replaced with a mini excavator. Per the plan.
maybe, I can't verify everything in one heartbeat. Maybe I got the wrong one. Maybe I pulled the wrong one. Okay? That's possible. I'll have to go back in.
Can I ask
Paul?
a question? First of all, I just want to ask one question from the last article, that we were going to have actually buy 2 trucks last year and this year, but we're going to end up with 3 gone, 1 that blew the engine, and 2 others are going to be outsourced or done.
Done.
Can we get, not right now, but can we get an email that just says, here's the trucks off of that report, which are gone, or will be gone?
974 and 97,
Okay.
yes.
And then with this, because half of this is enterprise funds, but you just said it was the grounds and maintenance backhoe.
No, that's not being replaced.
That's not being replaced.
Okay, so
That-
I'm sorry,
that's-
then
that is
I
not
thought I
it.
heard you say it was the ground
No.
and maintenance, or
The-
maintenance.
When the grounds maintenance backhoe is replaced, it is recommended through the Mercury report to replace it with a mini excavator. That's not the unit, that's not the backhoe I'm looking to replace. I'm looking to replace one of the 2 highway division backhoes.
Richard, one place where it's confusing is on the master spreadsheet, it says number 997 instead of H9, and the numbering convention's off.
Right.
And it says it's a year 2000, whereas our information says year 1999.
And, well, see, I also have H9 here shown as a sander dump truck. I have it here as a sander dump truck. So I don't know how the numbers are swapped around, but I show it as a total,
I was looking at some stuff with Chris today. Do you have
I show it as a total different piece of equipment on all the inventories that you've given me, Mike. And I think that's what led me to the conclusion that it was the other one down here that actually there had been some type of mistake. I think I looked at the, I don't have the paperwork brought back up in front of me, which, too many sheets, folks. See, backhoe.
I've got something that, and between our changing numbers, from vehicle numbers to the new numbers, H for highway, I have H9 as unit 997, which is the backhoe. Oops, I'm sorry. Here.
Okay, can I ask,
Mike just, maybe I misunderstood again,
Mhm.
you said it was a highway backhoe?
Highway guys run the equipment, but they also go out and dig trenches for water utility, water lines, sewer lines, stuff like that.
Correct.
Okay, well, you said highway, and then it's
Highway, water, sewer, as opposed to the ground.
Okay. That's what we need to clarify.
Did that clear it up, Richard?
oh, yeah, it's clear in mud. I've got 3 or 4 inventories over here that showed as a dump truck, and now I'm suddenly given another inventory that shows it as a backhoe. It's
Time to hit the shredder.
Yeah, it's extremely clear to me, Marie. I have no idea. I did all my background on the existing inventories that I have, that I've had for 2 or 3 years. Okay.
Okay, well, any other questions on the backhoe? All right.
Ray,
Yes.
I've got a question. And actually, since it relates to these vehicles, it's kind of a general question. I've been noticing that the DPW facility's been open when it's not open. I mean, the gates are open, like on Sunday morning.
When somebody is there from, for recycling, I would assume.
On a Sunday morning at
Well,
7 o'clock?
Well,
the police department.
Yeah.
The police get up to fuel
The
the
police
Oh, is that
department
what it
open the
is?
gates,
Okay.
and then one cruiser comes down, and they don't close the gate, then a second cruiser, then the third cruiser. They fill at the end of every shift.
Okay. And how long is it open like that?
I
okay.
don't know.
Well,
I can't answer the question.
We really have to.
It's however many times.
I mean, it has to do with the security of the
I know,
vehicles
but
we're about to,
I think we can ask those offline. We
That
really have to
section of the
stick to-
yard is locked off.
Mhm.
Where we keep the vehicles has a gate that gets locked, right? It's
I
only the
see,
fuel
I
pump
see
side.
vehicles that are
You don't want those
exposed.
vehicles. If they
Yeah.
go, let them go.
Our vehicles that we use are in a separate area that is locked off. That is,
Those
like
are
I said, for the fuel
surplus.
pumps and stuff like that, so.
Any other questions
I
on the
still don't wanna
backhoe?
look into it.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Marie, I'll look at it tomorrow and get back. I still think I'm more right than wrong, but I don't have time to research it now.
What, do you want us to hold off on the motion?
No,
for
you
that?
can let it fly
Can I ask
through,
a-
and
can I ask
I'll
another question?
go at it at town
is
floor
the
if I have to. Mike, only one question on the, I notice you're loading these things up pretty heavy. Air conditioning, heating, closed cabs,
In the trucks?
no, the backhoes.
Yeah.
That's your standard operating?
Yes.
Can you tell me why?
Heating?
No, heating, I understand.
Heating we have, air conditioning, because it can be very, very hot. You're encased in glass all the way around when you're working.
These have crank-out windows?
They do. but
Okay,
it still gets
I'm
very
just
hot.
asking, I mean, these are loaded up. I would like to be able to buy equipment like this myself, but I can't.
It's for the people who are doing the job.
Okay.
Yeah. Paul?
And I might have missed this because there was papers going around. The replacement of this backhoe is due to aging to get out of the fleet. It's on schedule to be replaced. It's breaking down. We don't need it.
All of the above, no, not because we
Not
don't need it.
but
It's all of the above. It's wear and tear on a machine that gets used. We maintain it, but it's, let me check on the year.
Your paperwork says
It's
19.
2000, so it's 14 years old.
okay. Well, in all honesty, I have no idea what that means in backhoe life. I mean,
Well-
dogs are, no, I'm just here. No, I'm serious. My question is to you, is it more out of service than in service? Is that, because if it's, again, I don't know if a backhoe can last 25 years or 10 years. And my only question is it need to, because my concern is the impact we're gonna have to our water and sewer rates by the capital projects, because we're already told, our charges are going up, which means we're gonna have to increase water rates for our residents. And every time we do this, and it's, the other truck was half and so forth, is that we're putting more and more pressure. And then when we go to set water rates, we're gonna wonder, not you, but we're gonna wonder why they went up so much. So my concern is the pressure it puts on the enterprise funds, especially in a year where we've had usage less than what was projected. We have a shortage of $150,000, and that retained earnings account is going to feel the effects of that, or the residents are going to feel it. So that's, my question is it out of service more than it's in service? Is it just done?
It's not that it's out of service all the time. It gets used for a variety of jobs, everything from down to, the older machine is the one that goes down to the recycling center. It just got wear and tear from 15 years. It does not, I'm not saying it's out of service weekly, but we're trying to replace equipment before it gets to the point where it's just a rusted hulk that will not work. The last big dump truck had to be loaded onto a trailer and pulled out because it was not roadworthy.
Okay.
Okay, Mike, I have one quick one. What, this, you say it's you're saying it's a 2000 or 1999's on the paperwork?
1999, we've got a discrepancy in the figures, whether it's a 1999 or a 2000. I had 1999, Mercury has 2000.
Okay, why would we not be replacing a 1997 backhoe?
The grounds one?
That's the grounds one. It's smaller, it gets used a lot less. If we were going to replace that, it's not going to be replaced as a backhoe, it's going to be replaced as a mini excavator. And we are looking to replace the backhoe, because that backhoe is used more than the grounds department one.
All right.
Grounds department one essentially is used for snow plowing, digs a couple holes over the course of the year.
Right, and I noticed another thing on the, and I mentioned the town manager, your requisition forms, there was no notation of hours of usage or mileage on any of these vehicles. I think it should be put on there.
We're gonna make the adjustment, yep.
When you order a vehicle.
Yep.
Okay, I'm gonna check tomorrow. I've still got,
Sure.
I'm just slightly crazy, but there's something that I'll bring to your attention on.
Are you asking for us to table it?
No,
Or go ahead with
no,
the motion?
no. Let's go.
Okay, let's,
I have a quick.
yes.
So Mike, you're saying that this backhoe that is supposed to be replaced by the Bobcat is
No.
a...
No.
No, different,
No, I
two
under,
different
that's what
machines.
I'm getting, is a different, that was
Yeah.
I was about to finish my question.
I'm sorry.
Is a different machine than the one that you're asking to be replaced this time? And are they different types of backhoes?
You mentioned Bobcat, that's something.
No, I understand the difference between Bobcat. Now, I'm saying, you said there was a 1997 that's due to be replaced by a
Mini
Bobcat,
excavator.
which is a Bobcat.
No.
No, it isn't. Mini.
I think Bobcat does make a mini excavator, but no,
Well, it's an
Bobcat's a skid steer.
But that's not being discussed this year, it's another
Not
year.
Yeah, I know, but this is the confusion that's going on. And so, are the two backhoes, the 1999 and the 1997, the same type of backhoe?
Yes, the 1997 is a smaller version, but they're both backhoes.
Okay, but they don't do the same job.
They
Because
could
one's-
do the same job,
Oh, they could.
they could.
Okay, the motion on the floor is if we're going to replace the backhoe, the larger one that's 96,000 for 48,000 from the general fund.
And on that, Marie,
Yes.
the numbers, it's got it down as,
It's been changed, Alex.
Oh.
That one was wrong. This
Yeah.
one's.
that, okay, so this one's right,
Yeah.
all right. okay.
So, all those in favor?
Yeah, our light's gonna go out at 11 o'clock.
Yeah. All those opposed?
I'm just,
Okay. So now, let's keep powering through the highway SUV. What's the problem with the highway
was
SUV?
that passed? With Metro Williams?
Oh, first of all, motion to approve the highway SUV.
Did it pass?
So much.
Okay, second? Is there a second? Okay, now discuss, where's the second?
Okay, this is,
I'll second it.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, just because I didn't see his hand.
yeah, this is H16.
Okay, highway SUV for 27,850.
Okay, it starts, I could not find a package in our printouts on this thing.
Someone else hand out the phone. Jeez.
Yeah, there wasn't any package.
I was embarrassed today to
Where's the
see
end?
that we couldn't see it, when the whole package got
99 or
all
2000.
scanned and
The
put
machine still
together.
aged a year while
Well,
we
if
were
you were
discussing
embarrassed today, it means that somebody gave you a copy of
And
the
that's
email
right.
I sent out.
No, I was talking.
You had to be, because no one else knew it.
No, I had a list of
Wait,
questions
you
from
gotta-
Steve.
Oh,
Some were generated by Marie.
okay,
I was listening, Richard.
yeah. Okay, what I had on this thing, Marie, and I don't know if we're, and I don't mean this negatively, I don't know whether we're summarily changing inventories, which are, inventory numbers, which I dearly hope we're not, because everything is geared back to that study, and that thing should be succinct and keep going. And if we don't, we're gonna be trying, 2 years from now, we won't have the foggiest idea what piece of paper we have in front of us.
Having Chris add another column to the inventory, so you can see the difference between the numbers, so you can compare them on the same line.
Okay, but
Good.
what I showed on vehicle H16 on my inventory, it's a dump truck, and ironically, it's dump truck number 995.
No.
That's what I said too, like, I went, no.
So what is it supposed to be?
I don't know.
Okay, so what would you, it's supposed to be H16?
I'm not gonna recommend
According to-
anything. I'm just-
H16, I think, was 1021, which was, it's a 2002 pickup truck. It's the one that Chris Reed drives around in.
Okay, so you're saying now SUV is gonna be replaced by which vehicle, Mike?
No,
The
pickup.
sorry.
No, 1021, the four-wheel drive pickup truck is going to be replaced with the small SUV, like a Ford Escape.
1021?
1021
There's going to become an H16?
is, yes, we're just changing, so, the numbering with 1021, I don't know where they came up with these numbers years ago. We're just trying to get very simple. H is highway, HE is engineering, W is water, S is sewer, G
Well-
for grounds.
Actually, like 1 through 30 might be a little simpler, but that's just me.
If everything before me, and I don't know, maybe it's not that important, but everything before me shows H16 as a dump truck and now it's an SUV, there's a lot of confusion because that just tears this study all to pieces. I mean, there's nothing that I can link to this study,
Well,
so.
again, we are adding a column to what you had, the big sheet right in front of you, so you will see,
This one?
yes.
Okay. You give me ulcers, Mike.
They give me ulcers. I'm trying, this 1021
Well, we're discussing that.
is right here.
Yeah, 1021. Yeah, but where's the old H numbers?
It's, no, the
Oh, you're
H
gonna add a
numbers are
column.
the new ones, we're gonna add
He's
that.
got,
Well,
he's- I don't
we had
know.
H numbers on the
This
old
third
ones,
column,
too.
he's got one with the third column in
Remember?
it. I mean, we're getting hung up on the numbers of the trucks versus, we should be looking at make, model.
That's going
Yeah.
back.
Well, that's the, Stephen, that's the only way you can trace them. Because you've
No, no, I
got,
was just asking if we could get an updated spreadsheet.
Oh, yeah.
I agree that it's confusing to have H whatever and then these other numbers,
Yeah.
but if we can read, you know, 4x4 compact pickup 2002 and go by the year and the model,
well, we try that too, but sometimes we have duplicate vehicles.
that's true.
And then you go for mileage. Until mileage is not there, then you go
Right.
for the heavens and look for advice.
On one like this where it's the only one like it on the plan,
Okay?
though
So-
we can do that.
Is the 1021 due to be replaced according to the fleet plan?
Yes.
Yes.
And it's due to
And-
be replaced with a Ford Escape or an SUV.
And so are we in the right price range?
Yes.
Yes.
We just bought one.
Okay.
It was nice.
And it's gonna be a sedan, right? Or a
SUV.
SUV?
Small, like a Ford Escape.
Okay.
Four-wheel drive.
Did you see the one I had in my parking spot for
Okay.
a couple of weeks? It's the exact same vehicle.
Okay, I understand, but the fleet plan didn't show it. It showed getting a sedan. Have you changed your
No,
mind on
the
that?
fleet plan shows.
No, it does not.
The fleet plan only showed one SUV.
And this is it.
No, you've already just got one.
No, engineering.
Engineering has one.
Engineering had one. Excuse me.
Yes?
Full size, like full size.
I think we're almost done with this one and then we'll shut it down. Yeah.
We're looking at economies of scale of losing everything. Can you hold that for me?
So, according to the fleet plan, we're supposed to be replacing this with an SUV. And according to Richard, there was only one SUV allowed this year, and you're
Well, that's
saying
all the
there's
plan
two.
showed. And Marie, I'm gonna tell you, I don't think that's a major thing, whether it's a sedan or one of the little SUVs.
Okay.
I don't really, do you, Mike? I mean, aren't they about the same, well, that's, the
This is
sedan
that
was
four-wheel
like
drive. I mean, that's the reason I want it.
Right, but you wanted sedans when you made the study out, though. Because you had Ford
No,
Fusions.
They recommended sedans.
Okay, they recommended, but
Yeah.
that's what they recommended based on the
Correct.
workload analysis.
All right, so, we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor?
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
What, why do you
Yeah,
need
we
four-wheel
did.
drive?
It's the,
Dump the leaf.
division head for the highway department. He
What's
needs-
that?
The division head for the highway department, so he's a guy, he's out on the road, sometimes before the snow plows, before the salters are out.
Okay,
He needs to be able to get around town.
okay, thank you.
And the only question I have is why SUV versus pickup? I would imagine like the guy that's out there, the pickup is a little bit more utility.
It was recommended as an SUV because
Okay.
it's cheaper than the pickup.
Oh, really? Okay.
Well, the genesis of it, that this is a new acquisition in your fleet. Because you are getting rid of some of the old sedans that were coming down from the
But
police.
this is not a sedan.
But I mean, generally
Yeah.
speaking, that's what brought this whole
Right.
metamorphosis about.
This is replacing a four-wheel drive pickup truck. So
Right.
It's a Chevy S10 pickup truck.
Yeah.
Okay, all those in favor of the SUV, highway SUV? All those opposed? Okay. Now, really quick, is there a problem with WS four-wheel drive PU, whatever that is?
Which one is it?
Oh, no, skid steer loader. Any problems? If so, we're going to shut down the meeting and go to tomorrow.
budget, too.
Yeah.
I think we may be all right.
Mike, I had one quick question. The inventory, my inventory showed one skid loader, and then 2 years later, that one was gone, and it changed skid loaders.
We used to have 2 skid steer loaders. The highway department has a
Okay,
Bobcat
okay, that's
since
what I want to know.
1995.
So you're telling me the inventory I originally had was bad then? That's all I needed to know.
Well, again, the other inventory was not bad. That's an older inventory than the.
But it only
Mercury.
had one skid loader on it. Yeah.
Depending on how old it was, is there a date on the bottom of that?
Yeah, 2010, 2011.
Okay,
It
because-
changed between 2010 and 2011. You surveyed one
The
and you,
skid steer that was gotten rid of was one that came from the schools.
okay, do you have a skid loader down there now?
Schools?
No, do you have
Highway
one down there?
department, yes.
Okay,
We
and
have a
that's, okay.
1995 Bobcat we're looking to replace. A couple of years ago, we got rid of, I can't remember what year it was, a
Yep.
Thomas skid steer
About
loader that
3 years
came to the DPW from the schools.
Okay, do you know how many miles on that thing, or how many hours?
Off the top of my head, I do not.
Okay,
I'll get that information for you if we have an hour counter.
yeah.
Do you want that information, and we'll hold that
No,
hold
I
off till tomorrow?
don't. The main thing was clearing up the confusion. I mean, there is criteria for replacement, and Mike is fully aware of that, how many hours should be, or the years on the equipment when you replace it. And that should be the backdrop of any purchased vehicle requisition coming before the board.
Do you want that information then before we vote? and
Sure,
Put it
I
off
mean,
till
we'll
tomorrow?
do it tomorrow, anyway, just give me the hours. I think I had, I don't know if the inventory's accurate, what I had, Mike.
I'm looking for a motion
Motion to
to
adjourn.
adjourn. Is there a second?
Yeah, second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye. Who's got the bourbon?
That should have been done before the meeting.
Just for Mike's time, do we need him back for one vehicle? I suppose there's a-
Likely not, and I'll just.
And do
I'll
we
roll
have,
up there.
what about
Bicycle,
the,
yeah.
Ed
Let me
Holt?
just see if I can give you the hours right now.
Okay, we're done. We're done.
No, but